Chapter 807. Looking at Chu Xiao, Wei Shuya sighed deeply and said, "You're really bold. Aren't you afraid that if this matter is exposed, there will be no place for you in the Yinma clan?" Chu Xiao shook his head and said, "I don't care about that. If I don't kill Yuan Tianfang, it won't feel good to be stared at by an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm. Besides, I've prepared so many excuses, so I'm not afraid of being exposed. The Yinma clan fights their own battles. Yuan Tianfang is dead, and most of his disciples and grand-disciples are dead. Who would take a dead man seriously?" Wei Shuya shook his head helplessly. That was really the case. If Yuan Tianfang was alive, maybe someone would stand on his side for the sake of their friendship in the past, or they just wanted Yuan Tianfang to owe them a favor. But now that Yuan Tianfang was dead, who would stand up for a dead man? People in Jianghu were very realistic, especially those in the Devil Dao, who were even more realistic. Next time something like this happens, remember to tell me. I'm not so old that I can't fight. Chu Xiao shook his head and said, "Elder Wei, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but it's useless even if you come. There's no one in charge in the Yinma clan. Xing Situ wanted to kill me, so I killed him. I'm not wrong. Yuan Tianfang came to me to avenge his disciple, but he's not wrong. When will there be an end to revenge? Only when one side is completely dead can this grudge be settled. At the beginning, if there was a person in charge who suppressed this matter, it would be fine, but now there isn't. So even if you go, it's useless. Yuan Tianfang may retreat temporarily, but he'll still be a problem in the future. With all due respect, Elder Wei, you can't suppress Yuan Tianfang." Wei Shuya let out a long sigh. This was also one of the drawbacks of the Yinma clan. Without a person in charge, they couldn't suppress so many Devil Dao villains with different personalities. In fact, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened to Chu Xiao. There had been internal killings between the Yinma clan. It was just that the others were not as bold as Chu Xiao, actually daring to even kill a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse. Forget it. Let's put this matter in the past for now. Are you sure your people won't leak the news? Chu Xiao nodded and said, "Elder Wei, don't worry. This time, the people who did it were all on our side. The Great Light Temple knows the news, but if they said it, it would mean that they were trying to sow discord within the hidden devil faction. Who would believe them?" Seeing that Chu Xiao had arranged everything properly, Wei Shuya nodded. He was about to say something when someone knocked on the door. Wei Shuya pushed open the door and went out to take a look. A disciple said, "Elder Wei, there's a piece of news from the pugilistic world. The lords are asking for you." Wei Shuya was stunned, and he subconsciously looked at Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao was at a loss. Was the news leaked? It shouldn't be a problem. What news? The disciple of the hidden devil faction scratched his head and said, "I'm not too sure. It seems that an ancient relic was excavated near the Great Light Temple. It's quite a big deal." Hearing that disciple say this, Chu Xiao was stunned. Could it be that the guys he had sent to excavate Lu Jianghe's treasures had dug up something amazing? Wei Shuya and Chu Xiao immediately returned to the meeting hall. The other big shots of the hidden devil faction who had just left also rushed back. Seeing that Wei Shuya had come, someone immediately handed him a piece of paper, which recorded the big event that had just happened. Chu Xiao went over to take a look. Sure enough, those guys had dug up something amazing. There were a total of 3 places with treasures, and 2 parts had been excavated. However, Chu Xiao had said that he would only give them 3 months, so this group of people was a little anxious. They did not dig in the place that Chu Xiao had specified, but started digging in other places. They did not expect to dig up something amazing. What they had dug up was an ancient relic, and it was an ancient relic with an independent space. However, the formation in that place was too strong, and it was not something that the small families could open. So after a while, the place was discovered by the Great Light Temple, and it was taken over by the Great Light Temple. However, there were too many witnesses to this incident. There were so many that almost all the small clans knew the details of this incident. Furthermore, the Great Light Temple could not silence them by killing them. Of course, there was no way to silence them, so the news gradually spread throughout the martial arts world. These small families were not knowledgeable and did not know what the relic represented. However, as the details spread in the pugilistic world, some knowledgeable people had already deduced that the ancient relic was not an ordinary ancient relic. It was a relic from the end of the ancient times, when the Great Calamity occurred. There might even be some secrets about the Great Calamity of the ancient times. In fact, regarding the ancient Great Calamity, ordinary warriors and some warriors who stood at the peak of the underworld had a fundamentally different understanding of it. What ordinary martial artists knew was that in ancient times, a great calamity had descended and nearly destroyed everything. The present world had been rebuilt from the ruins of 10,000 years ago. However, the other big sects and the warriors who stood at the peak of the underworld undoubtedly knew more. They had dug up a lot of information and explored countless secret realms related to it. It could be said that the words ancient great calamity carried many secrets. For example, what kind of calamity was this ancient great calamity? Also, since the big sects and the powerhouses in ancient times had deduced the ancient great calamity, and they even deliberately created a secret box to store precious martial arts, then why did they not find a way to protect themselves, but just wait for death? Also, the ruins excavated by the major forces also found a suspicious point, which was that in ancient times, some of the top sects almost did not leave behind any inheritance, and even the sects had disappeared. For example, according to countless ancient records and some fragmented clues, the current underworld people had already deduced that in ancient times, there was a behemoth-like Taoism holy land called the Three Pristines Temple, which controlled the world's 3,000 Taoism sects, and was known as the supreme leader of Taoism. The current Taoist master mansion or the real martial arts sect could not be compared to that kind of existence. In the end, after the ancient great calamity, the Three Pristines Temple completely disappeared, and no relics were passed down, and no inherited martial arts were passed down. This was very unreasonable. Some forces that were much weaker than the Three Pristines Temple could leave behind some relics, but the Three Pristines Temple, which was much stronger than them, was completely annihilated. There was definitely something wrong with this. Moreover, the last time the ruins in Xiaofan heaven opened, everyone finally found a place related to the Three Pristines Temple, which was a branch of the Three Pristines Temple. Although it was only a branch, it also revealed some news. It seemed that before the ancient great calamity, some people went to a place, and this place was not accessible to everyone. For example, Chu Xiao once found the diary written by a disciple of the ancient Taoism sect, Spirit Treasure Temple, in Xiaofan heaven. Even in a large Taoism sect like Spirit Treasure Temple, only 2 people were qualified to go to that place, and this was on account of the lives of almost everyone in Spirit Treasure Temple. Chu Xiao was not the only one curious about this place, and almost all the sects and powerhouses that stood at the peak of underworld were curious about this. Therefore, Chu Xiao was sure that once this news came out, countless forces would flock to the secret realm, and it would be impossible for the Great Light Temple to monopolize it. Chu Xiao also asked Lu Jianghe in his mind, "There's such a secret realm relic so close to where you buried the treasure, and you actually didn't discover it?" Lu Jianghe said with a depressed expression, "The Great Light Temple has been located in the bitter north for tens of thousands of years. Who would have thought that there would be a secret realm relic under their own sect, and they actually didn't discover it themselves? Of course, I didn't think of this." Chu Xiao was also slightly speechless. Of course, the unluckiest one now was the Great Light Temple. There was such a relic under their own sect's feet, and they actually did not discover it. If the Great Light Temple was the first to discover this place, they could have found a way to completely cover up the secret realm relic, and it would not have been known by the entire underworld. Wei Shuya coughed and said, "Everyone, our Yinma clan has been silent for a long time. During the great battle between the righteous and demonic, only our Yinma clan did not suffer much damage. This time, we should stand up for the secret realm relic." Everyone present nodded their heads in agreement. They had no choice but to help the moon-worshipping cult, so they did not use their full strength. This time, exploring the secret realm relic, there was no reason for them not to make a move. Therefore, the discussion this time was very smooth, and no one objected. Everyone reached an agreement immediately, and Chu Xiao led the way to the bitter north. In the northern Yan region, the Yinma clan did not have much power base. The Zhenwu Hall run by Chu Xiao was considered the largest force, so this time, it was natural that Chu Xiao would take the lead. At the same time, on the Kunlun Mountain in the far west, the mountain range towered into the clouds. The foot of the mountain was covered in snow all day long, and the mountainside was surrounded by clouds and mist, like a fairyland. The strangest thing was that at the top of the mountain, it was spring all year round, and it was a fairyland scene with birds singing and flowers fragrant. It was very out of place. Of course, such a scene only existed on the east side of Kunlun. The west side was gloomy, and it was shrouded in dark clouds and thunder all day long, like purgatory on earth. That was where the Kunlun devil cult used to be, and the East Kunlun mountain range belonged to Elysium. After the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, the eminent monks of Subodhi Monastery set up the 6 paths of Buddha reincarnation formation to seal the rootless sacred fire of the Kunlun devil cult. The entire West Kunlun mountain range was set up by countless sects with more than 10 kinds of absolute formations, and it was completely unsuitable for warriors to live in. The East Kunlun Mountains, where the Gate of Heaven was located, were only separated by a mountain peak from the West Kunlun Mountains. With the strength of the Gate of Heaven sect master, Jun Wuxian, it would be a piece of cake for him to break through those great formations and occupy the entire Kunlun Mountains. However, for some unknown reason, the Gate of Heaven had never taken a step into the West Kunlun Mountains even after so many years. Chapter 808. In the East and West Heavens, the East Sea Heavens of Freedom and the Kunlun Heavenly Gate could be said to be the sects with the strongest individual combat power in the world. The master of the East Sea Heavens, Zhong Xinxiu, was elusive and only existed in legends. Although the Heavenly Gate was mysterious, it occasionally appeared in the martial world. At the peak of the East Kunlun, cave mansions were carved on the mountain peaks. There were all kinds of strange runes on them, which looked simple and desolate. At this time, in a cave mansion, an armored martial artist said emotionally, "Master, the 10-year deadline is not up yet. I should still be the one to step into the martial world this time. Why let this guy go?" This martial artist was one of the 9 great divine generals of the Heavenly Gates, Divine Lord Luo. In the past, when many sects had headed to the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall to besiege Chu Xiu, he had been scared off by the aura that Dugu Weiwa had leaked out, and had directly returned to the Heavenly Gates. Opposite to Divine Lord Luo, a middle-aged martial arts practitioner with loose hair and a mustache said with a faint smile, "Divine Lord Luo, are you still not convinced? Decades ago, you lost the key to Chu Kuanga. At that time, everyone said you were incompetent. You even said that you met a madman who didn't care about his life. But this time, you were scared away by a junior and ran back to the Heavenly Gate. What a joke. Dugu Weiwei, why don't you say that you met Ning Xuanji? 500 years have passed. The Kunlun devil cult has long perished." Divine Lord Luo said angrily, "Kuang Xiue, you know nothing. The aura leaking out from that brat's body definitely belongs to Dugu Weiwa. I can forget other things, but you and I have seen the video of Dugu Weiwei slaughtering the 9 divine generals of the Heavenly Gate countless times. How can I forget it?" Kuang Xiue, who was sitting on the stone chair, lazily said with a disdainful smile, "Divine Lord Luo, you've really cultivated so much that your brain has gone blank. Who is Chu Xiu? He is the heir of the Hidden Devil lineage. What is the identity of the Hidden Devil lineage? They were the remnants of the Kunlun devil cult. Chu Xiu obtained some of Dugu Weiwei's belongings, and they have some of his aura. What's so strange about that?" Divine Lord Luo still wanted to say something, but a voice that wasn't too heavy suddenly came from above. "Shut up." Upon hearing this voice, Kuang Xiue immediately stood up from his stone chair. Divine Lord Luo didn't dare to say anything else. A man who looked to be in his 30s sat at the head of the table. He wore a black robe, but his hair was as red as fire. His appearance was very ordinary, so ordinary that one would have almost no impression of him at first glance. However, his entire person was like a star. Even though he had such an ordinary appearance, when placed on his entire body, there was an invisible aura that made one unable to shift their eyes away. This person was the Lord of the Sky Gate, ranked 4th on the sovereign ranking, Jun Wuxian. After the disappearance of Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji for 500 years, no one would find it wrong to say that Jun Wuxian was the world's second strongest. Staring at Divine Lord Luo, Jun Wuxian said calmly, "I can tolerate some mistakes once, but I can't tolerate it a second time. The first time, you met Chu Kuanga. Although this person rose to fame, his temperament is incomparable. I can understand that you suffered a loss at his hands. The second time, you met Chu Xiu. This person is the most outstanding figure of the younger generation in the pugilistic world, and he is also the heir of the Hidden Devil lineage. Just like what Kuang Xiue said, he might have these things that Dugu Weiwei left behind. I can also understand that. However, a mistake is a mistake. Everyone only has one chance to step into the pugilistic world. If you waste it, don't think about getting a second chance. Last time, the key fell into Chu Kuanga's hands, but you could still get it back. This time, the ancient relic has appeared. There may or may not be a key in it. If it falls into the hands of the Great Light Temple or the Celestial Master's abode, do I have to do it myself? I can't do it a third time. This time, let Kuang Xieyue go. You are responsible for strengthening the seal that he is in charge of. Jun Wuxian's voice was very calm, as if he was just describing a very ordinary matter. There was no anger or any emotion in his voice. However, it was this calm tone that made Divine Lord Luo dare not say a word. He could only nod and bow in agreement. After walking out of the cave, Kuang Xieyue chuckled at Divine Lord Luo and said, "Brother Luo, I have been sleeping a little too much recently. My seal has not been strengthened for a while. After you take over, you will have to put in more effort. Don't worry, if I see Chu Xiu again, I will help you see what it is that scared you so much." Kuang Xieyue. Divine Lord Luo shouted angrily. However, the next moment, Kuang Xieyue's body moved like a stream of light, disappearing in the blink of an eye. The Divine General of Tianmen stepped into the Zhonghu once again. This time, the matter of the ruins involved almost all the top sects in the Zhonghu. At that moment, more than 10 miles from the foot of the mountain of the Great Light Temple, the place had already been taken over by the Great Light Temple. The small forces that had been digging for the treasures had all hurriedly retreated when they saw that the matter had become too big. Although they were greedy and curious about what was in the ruins, they also knew that if they tried to take something that did not belong to them, they would die a terrible death. Based on their strength, they could not even break the formation. They had dug a 300-meter-wide hole in the ground, which was emitting waves of dim light. There was a stone tablet engraved with dense ancient characters. Although some of them were broken, the meaning of the characters could still be read. This place was an independent space during the ancient age. It was rich in resources, so it was occupied by all the major forces. They all had their own sects in it. Moreover, before the arrival of the ancient age disaster, the major forces had once discussed how to survive the ancient age disaster. This was also the reason why everyone suspected that there was a secret regarding the ancient age disaster. At that moment, Su Yun and Su Yan stood at the side of the ruins. Among them, there were several warriors breaking the formation. These warriors were not from the Great Light Temple, but from the Black Martial Sect, one of the 4 spirits. The warriors from the Black Martial Sect were good at all kinds of machinery, formation puppets, and other miscellaneous things. This time, they had been invited by the Great Light Temple. The Great Light Temple was really not good at breaking this kind of ancient formation. Most importantly, once it was forcefully broken, the Great Light Temple was afraid that some accident would happen and destroy the space. After experiencing the ancient age disaster, such an independent space was actually extremely fragile. Once there was any damage, the entire space might collapse completely. When that happened, they would not be able to get anything. Master Puyang, how much longer do we need to break the formation? Su Yan asked anxiously. At that moment, the news had already spread. The longer they delayed, the more people would come. Speaking of which, the Great Light Temple felt very aggrieved. In the end, such a precious ancient ruin had been under the feet of the Great Light Temple for tens of thousands of years and had not been discovered by anyone. This was a joke. In the end, they had finally discovered it, but it was discovered by outsiders. Su Yan could even imagine that a group of martial artists would definitely swarm over, and the Great Light Temple would not be able to stop them. The person who broke the formation was Black Martial Sect's Elder Puyang Yi. He was one of the rare formation grandmasters in the martial world. Hearing that, he leaped up from below and shook his head. It's easy to break the formation. However, this ruin has already been attacked by the ancient age disaster and is slightly fragile. Just breaking the formation might cause problems in this space. Therefore, I have to first strengthen the formation before breaking it. I reckon that it will take 1 or 2 days. Moreover, this ruin is similar to the ruins that were discovered before. Powerful martial artists at the mysterious heaven and earth realm probably won't be able to enter. At most, it can only accommodate powerful martial artists at the true fire refinement realm. Su Yun nodded and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you, Master Puyang." Puyang Yi hurriedly said, "You flatter me. Being able to break an ancient formation like this is very beneficial to my understanding of formations. I should be the one thanking the Great Light Temple." Su Yun said to Su Yan, who was beside him, "Don't worry. It's useless even if you worry. With such an ancient ruin appearing, Even if those people use their fastest speed, even if they use some trump card or secret technique, they will still rush over. They haven't shown up yet because the ruin hasn't been completely opened. Su Yan said in shock. Senior brother, you mean that they've all arrived? Su Yun looked in a direction and said calmly, of course they've arrived and there are quite a few of them. However, don't worry. What should be ours will be ours. We'll fight for it with our strength. The Great Light Temple is not afraid of anyone. Master Su Yun is indeed domineering. A mocking voice rang out. Demonic clouds surged in the distance. Dong Huang Tai, the moon-worshipping cult saintess, and 3 moon-worshipping cult god magi had arrived together. This was almost 1/3 of the entire moon-worshipping cult's strength. Seeing Dong Huang Tai arrive, Su Yan immediately snorted coldly. For both sides that had just finished the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths, it would be strange if Su Yan treated the other party nicely. Dong Huang Tai said with a faint smile. It seems like everyone doesn't welcome me? Su Yun said calmly, your moon-worshipping cult's injuries have all healed? Last time, more than half of the 9 god magi died. This time, the few behind you are all newly selected? Aren't you afraid that they will also die in the ruin, and your moon-worshipping cult won't even be able to gather 9 god magi? During the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths, Su Yun was the only one who was qualified to be Dong Huang Tai's opponent. Only he would dare to say such words to Dong Huang Tai. As for the 3 god magi that Dong Huang Tai brought with him, other than Shan Gue, the rest had come in later. What Su Yun said was not wrong. Dong Huang Tai laughed coldly and said, Master Su Yun, you better think about whether your Great Light Temple can gather the first seats of the 6 martial academies. You can't even protect the ruin you discovered at your own doorstep. Your Great Light Temple is going to be a joke this time. Chapter 809. Just as Dong Huang Tai and Su Yun were exchanging meaningless words, Chu Xiao and the rest of the Hidden Devil Clan also arrived. Because it was just in time for the Hidden Devil Clan's meeting, including Wei Shuya, the Hidden Devil Clan sent 4 true Fire Spirit Refinement Realm cultivators. Apart from Wei Shuya, one of them was the Scarlet Devil Sect Master, Evil Lord Scarlet Moon Qin Chaoxian. This person was a tall middle-aged man in a blood-red robe. Moreover, he had a square face and a righteous expression. Just by looking at his appearance, people would believe that he was a hero of the righteous path. It was very difficult to imagine that he was actually the sect master of the Crimson Devil sect. The other person was an old man wearing a black Taoist robe. He was Earth Devil Magician, Yu Moya. When Mei Qinglian introduced him to Chu Xiao, she said that he was a famous grave-digging demon. 90% of his cultivation came from digging graves. In his life, he had dug up the tombs of countless ancient experts and ancestors of some large sections. He had collected all kinds of martial arts. It was said that his biggest dream was to dig up the Storm Sword Tomb. It was a huge tomb that hid countless strong sword cultivators. Of course, Yu Moya was just thinking about it. If he did it in reality, he would be looking for death. The last person was an old man who was dressed sloppily and wore colorful clothes. He did not look like someone from the Central Plains. He was Ghost Dragon Cave Master, Wuma Mermaid. He was one of the most orthodox disciples of the Kunlun Devil cult. He was the disciple of a branch of the Kunlun Devil cult in West Chu. Later on, when the Kunlun Devil cult was destroyed, the branch in West Chu withstood the pressure. However, it changed its name and dared not say that it was a branch of the Kunlun Devil cult anymore. Instead, it changed its name to Ghost Dragon Cave, which was Wuma Mermaid's branch. Seeing so many people from the Hidden Devil Clan, Su Yan could not help but frown. However, Su Yun did not pay attention to the others. He only looked deeply at Chu Xiao. Su Du did not come this time. He was in seclusion in the Great Light Temple. The battle with Yuan Tianfeng was also beneficial to Su Du, so he was also in seclusion to digest the experience brought to him by that battle. However, before he went into seclusion, Su Du came to see him personally and told him about Chu Xiao. From Su Du's point of view, the entire Hidden Devil Clan was nothing to worry about. They were already at the end of their rope. However, Chu Xiao's existence was more threatening than the entire Yinma clan. His existence was equivalent to the morning sun rising in the east. When Chu Xiao really stood at the peak like the morning sun, would the Jianghu welcome another scene of demonic power that covered the sky? Su Du rarely evaluated a person seriously. Hence, This was the first time Su Yun had taken Chu Xiu seriously. He had never paid much attention to this junior martial artist who had risen to fame in the pugilistic world. Feeling that Su Yun was staring at him, Chu Xiu felt a little uneasy. It did not feel good to be stared at by a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse. Chu Xiu thought that Su Yun was weighing whether or not he should reveal that he and Su Du had joined forces to kill Yuan Tianfeng. However, Chu Xiu was not afraid. This matter had already passed. Su Du had already advanced to the 10th powerhouse on the wind cloud list. If the Great Light Temple revealed the truth, it would be a slap in the face. Why didn't you refute it back then? Moreover, many parties were about to enter the ruins to fight for it. Since Su Yun had said this, Chu Xiu could say that Su Yun was deliberately provoking them. At that moment, Dong Huangtai saw that the Hidden Devil Clan had arrived. He greeted them and breathed a sigh of relief. Ever since the last great battle between the Righteous Devil Clan and the Hidden Devil Clan, the relationship between the Bright Devil Clan and the Moon-worshipping clan had eased a lot. Both sides also knew that although they were not of one mind, only the other party could save people in the face of a life-or-death crisis. As the Bright Devil Clan and the Hidden Devil Clan appeared at the same time, the forces that had been hiding in the dark stopped hiding and appeared one after another. The three main Taoist sects arrived at almost the same time. The sect leader of the real martial arts sect, Sage Shenchen, Lu Chonglu, had arrived with several martial Dao masters. The Chunyang Dao sect had sent the leader of the Six Temple Guardian Sage, Chong Yunzi, along with Chunyang Dao sect's little martial uncle, Shi Yunzi, and several old Taoists. The others could not help but secretly shake their heads when they saw that the people from Chunyang Dao sect had white hair, except for Shi Yunzi. The Chunyang Dao sect had a strong foundation and had a lot of powerhouses. However, they were all from the previous generation, or even the generation before that. In the past few decades, how many young people from the Chunyang Dao sect had come up with? Apart from Shi Yunzi, there was almost no one else. The strength of a sect could not be supported by one person. The Chunyang Dao sect had indeed declined. The current generation was still doing well, but the next generation was really in danger. The people from Longhu Mountain were Thunder God, Xian Longzi and Zhang Qingzhen. Even in Longhu Mountain, many people thought that Xian Longzi was a lunatic. However, it was undeniable that his talent was top-notch in the Taoist Master Mansion. After not seeing him for a while, he had actually stepped into the true fire spiritual refinement state too. This attracted everyone's attention. Seeing the people from the Taoist Master Mansion, Dong Huangtai could not help but sneer. The people from the Taoist Master Mansion speak like a fart. Who was the one who said that they would seal the mountain for a year? Xian Longzi snorted. Now that Qingzhen and I have been expelled from the Taoist Master Mansion, we are naturally not considered as people of the Taoist Master Mansion. Can't we? Dong Huangtai was instantly speechless, but there was nothing he could do. A promise would only be kept if it was necessary. Back then, the Taoist Master Mansion had indeed said that they would seal the mountain for a year. In fact, that was also a tacit understanding between Yi Xiaonan and the old Taoist master. Neither Yi Xiaonan nor the old Taoist master wanted to kill him. In the end, Yi Xiaonan won. Therefore, sealing the mountain for a year actually meant that the Taoist Master Mansion would no longer care about the moon-worshipping cult, and the moon-worshipping cult would not go all out to kill the Taoist Master Mansion. Both sides had a tacit understanding to avoid mutual destruction. If Yi Xiaonan had really displayed the strength that Dugu Weiwei had, which could rival the martial arts world, then the old Taoist master would probably have fought him to the death. Therefore, the Taoist Master Mansion had sealed the mountain for a year because they did not care about the moon-worshipping cult. Now that such an important relic had appeared, how could the Taoist Master Mansion just watch from the sidelines? Although Xian Longzi's excuse was a bit ridiculous, it made sense. As long as he waited until the matter was over, he would be taken back by the Taoist Master Mansion. After the three great Taoist sects, another large Buddhist sect, the Subodhi Monastery, also sent people. Although the Subodhi Monastery had also made a vow to seal the mountain for a year, Dragon Tiger Mountain did not take it seriously, let alone the Subodhi Monastery. Therefore, Dong Huangtai did not say much this time. The Subodhi Monastery had sent an old monk named Jingchan Jizong. He only wore a simple yellow monk robe and was barefooted, but no one dared to look down on him. The Chunyang Dao sect had sent old Taoist priests, which was a sign of weakness to others. However, no one dared to look down on the old monks sent by the Subodhi Monastery. Everyone knew that the older the monks of the Sabodhi monastery were, the more terrifying they were. Their young disciples would not even appear in the pugilistic world. Jingchan Jizong greeted Su Yun in slightly choppy Central Plains Chinese before standing there motionlessly. However, Chu Xiu had a feeling that when Jingchan Jizong swept his gaze at him, it was filled with intense killing intent. That killing intent was released inadvertently, and Chu Xiu could guarantee that it was only targeted at him. However, on careful thought, Chu Xiu realized that he had a grudge with the Great Radiance Monastery, but he really had no grudge with the Sabodhi Monastery. He had never even seen a disciple of the Sabodhi Monastery. Why did the other party want to kill him? Chu Xiu asked Lu Jianghe, "Did you sense that old monk's killing intent just now?" Chu Xiu was worried that he had sensed wrongly. Had he been too sensitive recently? Lu Jianghe's psyche was attached to Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu could sense it, he should be able to sense it as well. Lu Jianghe chuckled and said, "Your senses are right. That old monk does want to kill you. Chu Xiu, you have to be careful." Although the Great Radiance Monastery is famous in the pugilistic world, the truly terrifying ones are the old monks of the Sabodhi Monastery. They are typical people who don't talk much. Ordinary people can't accept their ascetic life. Therefore, none of the people who came out of the Sabodhi Monastery are normal. Chu Xiu nodded gently. He did not look at Jingchan Jizong, but a hint of vigilance rose in his heart as he paid attention to the old monk. At that moment, Lu Fengxian, who was standing next to Chu Xiu, felt that something was wrong with Chu Xiu. He could not help but ask, "Brother Chu, what's wrong?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's nothing, Brother Lu. Be careful when you enter later. Don't fight head-on." Lu Fengxian had stepped into the martial Dao realm. Although he did not belong to any sect, he could enter the ruins because of his relationship with Chu Xiu. Lu Fengxian smiled and said, "I can still run if I can't beat them. It's not a shameful thing." To be honest, Lu Fengxian did not care much about his reputation. Right at this moment, another group of people came over. Chu Xiu's gaze was immediately attracted over, because this time, he actually saw a familiar person. There were only two people this time. One of them was a middle-aged man wearing a black robe with a lifelike azure dragon embroidered on it. This person carried a bone-chilling killing intent. As soon as he appeared, it was as if the temperature of the entire place had dropped by a few degrees. The most eye-catching thing was his eyes, which were filled with incomparable arrogance and madness. This person was the head of the Blue Dragon Society, Crescent Green Dragon, Butian, who was ranked 7th on the leaderboard. He was the world's #1 killer, the #1 assassin, and an out-and-out lunatic. At that moment, Chu Xiu's attention was not on Butian, but on the person behind him. The person behind Butian was the former Blue Dragon Society's Northern Yen Heavenly Sin Branch leader, Duan Tianlang, who had tricked Chu Xiu and chased him for thousands of miles. Chapter 8:10. Chu Xiu was not a very magnanimous person. On the contrary, he was actually a very vengeful person. Along the way, there were very few people who could scheme against Chu Xiu so miserably, and Duan Tianlang was one of them. The former Heavenly Sin Branch Master was indeed a character. He could be described as vicious, and his means were strange. In his eyes, no one was as important as his own future, so no matter how much potential Chu Xiu showed, he would use Chu Xiu as bait to cheat the Blood Jade Exquisite Dragon. Of course, this person might not necessarily be Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu did not join the Heavenly Sin Branch, then this person would be Tang Ya. But in the end, Chu Xiu had never forgotten about this matter, but Duan Tianlang was far away in the Blue Dragon Society, so he couldn't find trouble with the other party. And last time, Chu Xiu also heard from Mu Zi that this Duan Tianlang was quite capable. As soon as he stepped into the real pellet state, he became one of the 5 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. Although the ranking of the 7 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society did not represent their strength, it could represent their status in the Blue Dragon Society. Duan Tianlang became one of the 5 dragon heads, and this time when the ruins opened, Butian did not bring anyone, but he brought Duan Tianlang. This could already explain Duan Tianlang's status. To be precise, it was his position in Butian's heart. Chu Xiu smiled at Duan Tianlang and said, "Sir Branch Master, I don't know if you still remember me?" Duan Tianlang gritted his teeth and said, "Of course I remember. Even if you turn into ashes, I will remember." On the surface, Duan Tianlang was gritting his teeth, but in fact, there was a trace of horror in the depths of his eyes. Of course, Duan Tianlang would not forget Chu Xiao. It should be said that he had never forgotten Chu Xiao. He was even able to reach this step thanks to Chu Xiao. Although Duan Tianlang had failed to kill Chu Xiao, he managed to kill a hall master of the White Tiger Hall and successfully return to the Azure Dragon Society's headquarters. Not only that, he even managed to sneak into Bu Tiannan's side. At that time, Duan Tianlang didn't take Chu Xiao seriously. In his opinion, Chu Xiao was just a small character who took his Blood Jade Exquisite Dragon. Although it was a pity to lose the Blood Jade Exquisite Dragon, it was a blessing in disguise to be able to return to the Blue Dragon Society headquarters. However, as Chu Xiao became more and more famous in the pugilistic world, Duan Tianlang became anxious when he heard that he was the successor of the Hidden Devil faction. Chu Xiao was not dead, and he had reached this point. He would definitely seek revenge in the future. So under this pressure, Duan Tianlang cultivated harder and harder, and he even tried his best to cater to Bu Tiannan. In the end, he also reached the real pellet state, and he also became one of the 5 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. However, his results were nothing compared to Chu Xiao's. Even the current Chu Xiao could kill the existence of the real fire spirit refinement state. He was no longer on the same level as Duan Tianlang. Duan Tianlang was a ruthless person who judged others by himself. He would naturally bring Chu Xiao into himself, thinking that Chu Xiao would definitely come to him for revenge. Of course he was right. Chu Xiao was even more vicious and merciless than he had imagined. So over the years, Duan Tianlang had even been living in fear. One could imagine how much pressure Chu Xiao brought to him. Bu Tiannan glanced at Chu Xiao, then at Duan Tianlang. He suddenly smiled and said, "This kid is the one you betrayed back then. You didn't expect him to be stronger than you now?" Some of the details of Chu Xiao's early years had been revealed by Wind-Sweeping Tower. His experience as an assassin in the Blue Dragon Society naturally couldn't be hidden from others. At this time, hearing Bu Tiannan's words, Duan Tianlang quickly smiled awkwardly and said, "You also know that this matter." However, before Duan Tianlang's words were finished, he was interrupted by Bu Tiannan. Bu Tiannan looked straight at Chu Xiao and said, "Chu Xiao, you used to be a member of the Blue Dragon Society. I know you feel wronged. How about this? I kill Duan Tianlang and you join the Blue Dragon Society. I will give you the position of the 2nd Dragon Head. What do you think?" Duan Tianlang was so scared that his face instantly turned pale. He couldn't tell whether what Bu Tiannan said was true or just a joke. Even though he had served Bu Tiannan for a long time, he still couldn't figure out what was going on in his head. At this time, Wei Shuya said with a gloomy look, "Bu Tiannan, you're very bold to poach people from the Hidden Devil clan." Bu Tiannan laughed and said, "Old Wei, don't be angry. A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. This kid has no chance of developing in your Hidden Devil clan. A bunch of old people are about to die, yet they still refuse to give up their positions. Look at how generous I am. I directly gave him the position of the 2nd Dragon Head." This big dragon head of the Blue Dragon Society really didn't know how to speak. He was really arrogant. After hearing his words, not only Wei Shuya, but Qin Chaoxian and the other 2 from the Scarlet Drill Devil sect also had a dark expression on their faces. So in their Hidden Devil clan, they were all old farts who didn't want to give up their positions to the young? Before Wei Shuya and the others could say anything, Chu Xiao said indifferently, "A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in? Let's not talk about whether I'm a good bird or not. Big Dragon Head, you're not a good piece of wood." This Duan Tianlang betrayed his subordinates and is ruthless. He used such a person and put him in an important position. This will make many of our brothers feel bitterly disappointed. Big Dragon Head is a good bird that chooses a good tree to nest in. It will be hard to convince others. Moreover, as far as I know, the 2nd Dragon Head of the Blue Dragon Society, Duanmu Qianshan, has been with you for a lifetime. He has done his best to stabilize the internal affairs of the Blue Dragon Society for you. In the end, you want to kick him down with just one sentence and let me be the 2nd Dragon Head. But who knows if you won't easily kick me down next time and let someone else be the 2nd Dragon Head. As soon as Chu Xiao said this, Bu Tiannan's face instantly darkened. Although that extreme killing intent was invisible and intangible, it made Bu Tiannan feel like a bitingly cold winter. There was even water vapor condensing around Bu Tiannan. However, the next moment, that killing intent disappeared without a trace. Bu Tiannan suddenly laughed and said, "Boy, you're very interesting. But you have to think carefully. If you refuse me this time, then you have no fate with the Blue Dragon Society anymore. Duan Tianlang is one of the 5 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. If you want to kill him, you have to go through me first. In short, if you kill him, I will kill you. In this life, you won't have a chance to take revenge." Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "No, I feel that I have a fate with the Blue Dragon Society." Bu Tiannan didn't say anything. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Duan Tianlang, who was pale with fright. He slapped Duan Tianlang and made him stagger. He scolded, "Trash! I was just joking. Look at you. You're really embarrassing me." Duan Tianlang covered his head. He was angry but didn't dare to say anything. It should be said that he didn't even dare to be angry. How could he know if Bu Tiannan was serious or just joking? In the past, this big dragon head started to kill people while laughing. This kind of thing was not uncommon. Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and carefully looked at Bu Tiannan. To be honest, this person was also a legendary figure in the Jianghu. It was definitely not easy for him to go from a small assassin to where he was today. However, Bu Tiannan's personality was somewhat unpredictable. Using a person like Duan Tianlang could be considered to be a poor judgment of people. The second dragon head, Duanmu Qianshan, who had followed him for a lifetime and was conscientious, could be considered to be cold-hearted. Back then, because of the destruction of the Heavenly Sin branch, he dared to go to the Great Light Temple alone to demand an explanation. He even dared to make a move. He could be considered to be extremely crazy. But today, Chu Xiu saw Bu Tiannan's behavior. He was simply temperamental. Such a person was indeed worthy of being called a madman. If he wanted to kill Duan Tianlang, he had to think of a way to avoid this person. The crowd waited for a few more hours. The other sects also arrived one after another. Among the 5 major sword sects, Shen Baochen, who had forgotten about the sword hut, and Yan Ji, who had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm, came together. In the battle of the righteous and demonic path on floating Jade Mountain, after Yan Ji lost the murderous weapon, the Abyss, his cultivation actually rose and unexpectedly stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm. On the other hand, the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa's Villa Master, Chang Tingshan, came. He carried a seemingly ordinary iron box on his back, but it definitely contained the treasured weapons of the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa. The Hidden Sword Mountain Villa had actually gone to extremes these past few years. They placed too much emphasis on swords and neglected people. They did not know that for warriors, swords were only weapons that were held in their hands. However, the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa had put the cart before the horse. On the West Chu side, Chen Qingdi came alone. This time, he did not bring Xie Xiaolu. The scale of this relic was no longer suitable for warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm to explore. Only martial masters had the right to enter. Far away in the South Sea, the low-profile the 6th Demon Sect sent its sect master, Yi Buoxuan, in person. When he saw Dong Huang Tai, Wei Shuya, and the others from the Hidden Devil clan, he greeted them. The 6th Demon Sect was neither a bright devil nor a hidden devil. Both sides were able to get along well. Even the Northern Yen side had an important figure. Eastern Mountain Army's great general, Quang Tu, Beigong Bailey. On the 9 Great Clans side, the Gaoping, Lu clan, and Sun clan's ancestor came with a few clansmen. Compared to them, the Shongshui Ying clan had actually sent very few people. However, their strength was great. It was actually Ying Sanshu from the Ying clan and Ying Bailu. The current #1 on the world list, Ying Sanshu, although he looked like an ordinary middle-aged man without the slightest expression, only those who were from the same era as him knew how terrifying Ying Sanshu was. In the past, when he was ranked on the Longhu list, he was known to be invincible below the Grand Master. He was even more prestigious than Zhang Qingzhen of this generation. Of course, that was also because there were no monsters like Chu Xiu, Zhong Xian, and Feng Qishao in his generation. When Ying Sanshu stepped into the real pellet state and was ranked on the world list, he was known to be invincible below the true fire spirit refinement state. There were only 3 defeats in his life, so he was also known as Ying Sanshu. Although this person had not fought for more than 20 years, his power was still there. Even with Su Yun's strength, who had just experienced the war between the righteous and demonic factions, Feng Manlu did not dare to rank him above Ing San Shu. Chapter 8:11. More than 10 practitioners of the spiritual refinement state of true fire had gathered around the ruins. This scale was second only to the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths. The warriors of the Xuanwu Gate responsible for breaking the formation felt pressured. Wei Shuya frowned slightly. After the great battle, he thought that the Diabolists could finally raise their heads. Only now did he understand that the only one who could raise their heads was the moon-worshipping sect, because they had a strong practitioner like Yi Xiaonan. Although the Yinma clan had not suffered any damage, their strength was still there. Among the practitioners of the Jianghu who kept coming, there were very few who belonged to the Diabolists. Most of them were from the righteous path. The gap between the righteous and demonic paths was still very large. At that moment, another group of people from the devil path finally arrived. However, the people from the Yinma clan didn't have any good expressions towards them. In fact, their attitude was even worse than the people from the righteous path because they were from the evil extreme sect. Compared to enemies, traitors were certainly more hateful. Only 2 people from the omniscient sect came. One was Yi Tianxia, and the other was the leader of the omniscient sect, evil king Shang Beixian. In fact, in the Jianghu, especially in the eyes of other Diabolist sects, the omniscient sect did not have a good reputation. In their eyes, the omniscient sect was a traitor of the former Kunlun devil cult. Moreover, the omniscient sect was far away in the far north. Under the light of Buddha of the Great Light Temple, they could only be subservient and lick the moon-worshipping sect. They had no integrity or dignity at all. However, this evil king Shang Beixian had a rather good appearance. It was the exact opposite of the omniscient sect. Although Shang Beixian was not young, he still retained the appearance of a middle-aged man in his 40s. Most importantly, he was very handsome. When he was young, he was as handsome as Lu Fengxian, Ying Bailu, and the others. Even though he was older now, he had a mature charm. Lord Donghuang, long time no see. Shang Beixian greeted Donghuang Tai with a smile. However, Donghuang Tai's reaction was extremely cold. He only nodded slightly. Donghuang Tai actually looked down on the evil Zenith sect. They were too good at playing tricks. The omniscient sect had indeed contributed to the last war between the righteous and demonic paths. They had sent many warriors, and even the heir of the omniscient sect, Yi Tianxia, had been sent to West Chu. However, Shang Beixian had not come. The omniscient sect was clearly not going to bet everything on the moon-worshipping sect. Of course, there was nothing wrong with this. After all, there were very few people in the Jianghu who would stake everything on a single throw. It was understandable that the evil pole sect would hold back, but it wouldn't be easy for them to do so. Shang Beixian did not mind Donghuang Tai's attitude. He only smiled faintly, appearing extremely gentlemanly. However, Qin Chaoxian from the Crimson Demonic sect sneered, "Shang Beixian, you're quite bold to bring out your successor who hasn't reached the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Aren't you afraid that he'll die in there?" Shang Beixian smiled and said, "Everyone has their own fate. How can the younger generation grow without going through trials and tribulations? You and I went through life and death when we were young. Which danger is not more dangerous than now? The elites on the Longhu list have already stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. It's a bit late for our omniscient sect's disciples to enter the Jianghu. If we don't work hard to catch up, how can we succeed?" Yi Tianxia, who was standing next to Shang Beixian, snorted and said, "Sect Master, if you hadn't suppressed me for so long, I'm afraid I would have reached the real pellet state long ago. I really don't care about the so-called Longhu list. Feng Qi Shao has been surpassed by several people one after another. What's the point of being the first on the Longhu list? The next time I'm on the list, I won't appear on the Longhu list, but the Feng Yun list." Chu Xiu squinted at Yi Tianxia. This guy is actually a little cute, silly and cute. Nowadays, there aren't many people who are so blindly confident. He remembered that Yi Tianxia, as the trump card secretly cultivated by the omniscient sect, was indeed amazing when he first appeared. He cultivated the beastkin technique as a human, and even refined the blood dragon's Naiden. It was a pity that there were too many monsters in this generation of the Jianghu. Yi Tianxia's original goal was Zhang Qingzhen, but what happened in the end? Zhang Qingzhen had long left him in the dust. Later, Chu Xiu, Zhong Xian, and others also stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm one after another, leaving him far behind. As a result, Yi Tianxia still looked down on Feng Qishao and wanted to step directly into the Feng Yun list. This was a bit whimsical. On this generation's Longhu list, there were only 3 people who could enter the Feng Yun list after leaving the Longhu list: Zhang Qingzhen, Chu Xiao, and Zhong Xian. Even Ying Bailu couldn't do this. It was extremely difficult for Yi Tianxia, who had just suffered a setback in the fluttering snow city in the extreme north, to do this. At this moment, a familiar voice suddenly came. The Longhu list's number 1 is boring? I also think this thing is boring, so I'll give it to you. Everyone looked into the distance and saw Sword King City's true fire spirit refinement state powerhouse, Jianen King, Dugu Li, coming with Feng Qishao. Looking at the aura on Feng Qishao at this time, he had also stepped into the real pellet state. Chu Xiao was not surprised that Feng Qishao had stepped into the real pellet state. His talent and potential were not weaker than Lu Fengxian and Ying Bailu. He was surpassed by them one after another. In addition to this guy being a bit lazy, it was more of a coincidence. If there was no stimulation from the Yunyu Palace, probably Lu Fengxian and Ying Bailu wouldn't have broken through so quickly. They would have to wait until the conditions were right. The Sword Awakening Salamander of Sword King City was casually carried on his shoulder by Feng Qishao. He squinted at Yi Tianxia and sneered, "Little Che, do you really think those on the Longhu list are all vegetarians? I let Ying Bailu and the others break through first. That's me being modest. If you're not convinced, how about we fight now?" Yi Tianxia's face turned white and red. Just now he was still looking down on Feng Qishao, but in the blink of an eye, Feng Qishao had already stepped into the martial Dao Grand Master realm. This was quite a slap in the face. However, for the sake of his face, Yi Tianxia still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Shang Beixian. He chuckled and said, "Young hero Feng, don't mind it. My disciple is young and impetuous. He doesn't know the rules." Since Shang Beixian said so, Feng Qishao didn't continue to embarrass Yi Tianxia. He just leaned over to Chu Xiao and winked. "What I hate the most in my life is those who are more handsome than me. How can someone be so handsome at this age?" Lu Fengxian came over and said, "Brother Feng, are you talking about me?" Feng Qishao pushed Lu Fengxian aside with a depressed expression. "It's none of your business." Chu Xiao ignored Feng Qishao's tricks. He just asked curiously, "You just stepped into the real pellet state, don't you need to retreat for a period of time? Sword King City just let you out?" Feng Qishao shrugged and said, "It's a matter of time, why do I need to retreat? Those old guys are probably afraid that the people behind me will surpass me again, so they can't wait to pull me out for a walk." As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Qishao found that his choice of words seemed to be a little wrong. "What do you mean by walk? Walk by myself?" Just as he wanted to change his words, Du Guli said with a gloomy face, "Come back. How can you be so impatient?" Feng Qishao shrugged helplessly and had to return to Du Guli's side obediently. In Sword King City, this person was the oldest and had the worst temper. Feng Qishao dared to provoke others, but he really didn't dare to provoke Du Guli. Of course, Du Guli asked Feng Qishao to come over not only to let him be more serious, but he also didn't want to see Feng Qishao get too close to Chu Xiao. After all, Chu Xiao was a demonic cultivator, and the righteous and demonic cultivators were irreconcilable. Although Sword King City's position was not as firm as Great Light Temple or Chunyang Dao sect, they couldn't let their disciples join the demonic cultivators. At this time, everyone who should be here had arrived. Everyone was waiting for the people of Xuanwu Gate to completely open the array. Pu Yongyi seized the opportunity and busied himself for a few more hours. Finally, the formation below blossomed with a dazzling radiance. He let out a long breath and said, "It's finally done. Everyone can enter." Just at this moment, an extremely powerful aura rapidly descended from the distance. A middle-aged cultivator wearing a tiger skin cloak with a trace of evilness on his face descended from the sky. He stood in the middle of the crowd in an extremely high-profile manner. After looking around, he chuckled and said, "Fortunately, I made it in time. It doesn't matter if it's meat or soup, it has to be hot." Everyone present frowned because they felt that this person was a bit unfamiliar. However, the aura on his body was extremely powerful. Even Dong Huang Tai wouldn't underestimate him. However, there were only a few top powerhouses in the Jianghu. Who was this person who had suddenly appeared? Su Yun said in a deep voice, May I ask who this benefactor is? The middle-aged man chuckled and said, Well said, I am Kwang Xieyue from Elysium. As soon as they heard the words Elysium, everyone present immediately fell into a brief silence. Compared to other forces, Elysium was very troublesome. Any random divine general from Elysium was an expert among experts. They didn't expect that the appearance of this relic would actually alarm Elysium, a force that hadn't been in the Jianghu for a long time. It wasn't a good thing that such a strong competitor had come. At this time, Kwang Xieyue looked around and suddenly saw Chu Xiu. He laughed loudly and unexpectedly grabbed towards Chu Xiu without any warning. Was it you who scared off Divine Lord Luo last time? I want to see what evil things you have on you. After I take them back, I'll have a good laugh at that guy. No one expected that Kwang Xieyue would make a move on such an occasion. Instantly, Chu Xiu felt as if he was being stared at by a terrifying existence. Devil Qi erupted from his body and blood shadows swirled around. He was ready to use all his strength to resist. However, at this time, Wei Shuya had already arrived in front of Chu Xiu. He snorted coldly and waved one hand. A giant Devil Qi hand descended from the sky and blocked Kwang Xieyue's grab. So what if you're a divine general of Elysium? Do you think my hidden devil lineage is dead? Chapter 8:12. Kwang Xieyue was absolutely unscrupulous. He actually dared to attack Chu Xiu in front of so many big shots of the hidden devil bloodline. Regardless of how other big shots of Yinma branch thought of Chu Xiu belonged to Yinma branch. Even though Kwang Xieyue was an immortal general of Elysium branch, they couldn't let Kwang Xieyue kill Chu Xiu in front of the public. The Crimson Drill Devil Sect's Qin Chaoxian spoke coldly as well. Kwang Xieyue, do you really think that your heaven path is the #1 sect in the world? Even if my Yinma clan is not the Kunlun devil cult of the past, we are not people that you can humiliate at will. In an instant, the 4 true fire spirit refinement realm experts of the Yinma clan all looked as if they were ready to fight. Even Dong Huang Tai, who was at the side, laughed coldly and said, You wouldn't have known if you hadn't seen them. The people of the heavenly gates are indeed arrogant and overbearing. Whose power are you relying on? Jun Wuxian? There's not much of a difference between the 4th and 5th on the sovereign ranking. Although Kwang Xieyue was now targeting Chu Xiu, who was from the hidden devil bloodline, Dong Huang Tai already had a good impression of Chu Xiu. Moreover, he really could not bear to see people from Elysium being so arrogant. The righteous and demonic wars had just ended. Their moon-worshipping cult had fought against all the heroes of the righteous path, and Yi Xiaonan had fought several powerhouses alone without being defeated, securing the 5th position on the sovereign list. Even the moon-worshipping cult wasn't this arrogant, so why was the heavenly gate so arrogant? Moreover, in the eyes of Dong Huang Tai, apart from being inferior to the legendary Duge Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, his sect master might be qualified to fight against Zhong Shenxiu of Freedom Sky and Jun Wuxian of Elysium. Seeing that he had provoked public anger, Kwang Xieyue's face didn't show any timidity, embarrassment, or anger. He just laughed twice. Tiske, you guys really don't have a sense of humor. It was just a joke. Did you take it seriously? Kwang Xieyue's performance was very real, but only Chu Xiu knew that he had used all his strength in that grab just now. However, after hearing Kwang Xieyue's words, no one present wanted to fight with him right now. They could only snort coldly and give up for the time being. Chu Xiu retreated behind Wei Shuya, but his eyes were fixed on Kwang Xieyue. They were both Heavenly Gate divine generals, but Kwang Xieyue and Divine Lord Luo gave off a completely different feeling. Immortal Lord Luo's character was tyrannical and unreasonable. He did not take anyone seriously and looked down on everyone as though they were ants. That was why he had barged into the Guanzhong torture room, killed Guan Siyu, and dug up Chu Kuang's mausoleum. However, Kwang Xieyue had a neurotic look and was moody. No one could figure out what he was thinking. Just like what happened just now, even if he really had some ulterior motives towards Chu Xiu, a normal person would not make a move in front of the warriors of the Yinma clan. However, Kwang Xieyue had done so. He was also a madman who did not consider the consequences at all. Chu Xiu rubbed his head. Being targeted by such a person was much more troublesome than facing Yuan Tianfang, who always wanted to take revenge on him. This was because Chu Xiu clearly knew what Yuan Tianfang wanted and what he was afraid of. However, he could not figure out what Kwang Xieyue was thinking. Chu Xiu asked Lu Jianghe in his mind, By the way, How much do you know about the Heavenly Gate? What do you think the Heavenly Gate is? A bunch of good-for-nothings, Lu Jianghe said concisely. What? Chu Xiao looked at Lu Jianghe in shock. Are you sure you're talking about the Heavenly Gate, one of the eastern and western heavens? You're just a hall leader of the Blood Demon Hall. You don't have to be so arrogant, do you? Lu Jianghe shrugged and said, You can ask all the warriors who came from the holy sect. They will all answer like this. The leader of the Heavenly Gate was easily killed by the sect leader. 8 of the 9 great divine generals were killed by the sect leader, and 1 was disabled. The entire eastern Kunlun mountain range would have become the vegetable garden of the holy sect if the sect leader had not shown mercy. If such an existence is not good for nothing, then what is? In fact, the Heavenly Gate is no different from most of the sects in the Jianghu that were destroyed by the sect leader. The only difference is that the other sects were killed by the sect leader in one move, but the Heavenly Gate took a few moves and was stronger. Chu Xiao secretly shook his head. Dugu Weiwei was too abnormal in the past. Compared to him, everyone was indeed good for nothing. However, Chu Xiao thought about it again. Last time when he absorbed Dugu Weiwei's drop of blood, the image left by Dugu Weiwei seemed to say, I am you, you are me. Does that mean that I am also abnormal? At this moment, when Pu Yongyi saw that everyone had calmed down, he said, Everyone, the array formation has been opened. I wonder how everyone wishes to be teleported over? Su Yan frowned and said, How do we teleport? Could there be a problem with this space? Pu Yongyi said, Back then, the people who laid this array formation should not have been from just one faction. Instead, over 10 factions worked together to lay this array formation. Hence, by relying on this array formation, we can directly teleport to the bases of those 10-odd factions in the secret realm. However, some of the array formations in the secret realm are already damaged, so we can only teleport to 6 of them. Of course, everyone can also mess up the array formation and teleport to a random location. Everyone present exchanged glances and discussed for a while. Finally, they chose to teleport to a random location. There were over 10 factions warriors present, but there were only 6 teleportation locations. No matter how they chose, there would definitely be a fight over it. However, they still didn't know how big this space secret realm was, and they didn't know what was in it. It was too rash to start fighting as soon as they teleported in. Although random teleportation depended on luck, it could also avoid such things as much as possible. After coming to a conclusion, as Pu Yongyi opened the array formation, everyone also stepped in one by one. Before Wei Shuya entered, he transmitted his voice to Chu Xiao. Be careful of Kuang Xiue. The people of Elysium have always been secretive. No one knows what they want to do. You have been targeted by Kuang Xiue. If there is a problem, escape first. Don't show off. Wei Shuya was also frightened by Chu Xiao's courage. In a short period of time, this person went against the flow and killed 2 true fire spirit refinement realm existences. Wei Shuya was also afraid that Chu Xiao would get carried away and go against Kuang Xiue. The gap between the true fire spirit refinement realm was quite large, just like the gap between the real pellet realm. At least, whether it was Fang Jinwu or Yuan Tianfang, they were not qualified to be compared with Kuang Xiue. Chu Xiao nodded. Without Yuan Tianfang saying anything, Chu Xiao also knew that Chu Xiao would not get carried away without a certain degree of certainty. Of course, if he was sure, Chu Xiao didn't mind killing an Elysium divine general. After all, if what Dugu Weiwei said was true, then 500 years ago, he had already killed a sect master and 8 divine generals. A golden light flashed in front of him. When Chu Xiao opened his eyes again, there was no one around him. There was no aura of martial artists' activity within a radius of more than 10 miles. After sensing the surrounding aura, Chu Xiao began to look around. This secret realm only gave Chu Xiao a feeling that it was a paradise, but it was a paradise that was smashed by someone with a hammer. The surrounding yuan qi of the universe was extremely dense, and all sorts of strange flowers and plants were blooming. Although they had grown in a mess, one could tell that they had been meticulously planted here in the past. After taking care of them, they would definitely grow into a magnificent appearance. Under the weeds and trees, he could also see a paved bluestone road, which was extremely clean. Along the way, there were many courtyards or small temples for people to rest. From these things, one could see how prosperous the secret realm was in the past. However, at this moment, most of the courtyards and temples had already collapsed. Some places on the ground had also become extremely messy, as if an earth dragon had flipped over. As Chu Xiao walked along the road, he could already confirm that this place was indeed a secret realm in ancient times where the major forces and sects were stationed all year round. It was used for meetings or for seclusion and recuperation. However, these major sects were also wasteful enough. Such a treasure land, they did not even plant any spiritual herbs and the like. They actually used it to plant some highly ornamental trees and flowers. As Chu Xiao walked along the road, he basically did not see any spiritual herbs suitable for alchemy. At this moment, he suddenly felt some movement in front of him. It seemed that there was also the aura of martial artists fighting. Chu Xiao immediately walked in that direction and looked through the dense jungle. A magnificent white jade palace stood in it, but unfortunately, the white jade palace was smashed in half by a huge meteorite. At this time, in front of the white jade palace, the two brothers of the Sun family, Sun Qili and Sun Xiaofan, the two martial Dao masters of the Lu family of Gao Ping, and Cheng Tingshan of the Hidden Sword Villa were confronting each other. Obviously, everyone wanted to take the lead and monopolize the White Jade Palace. Among the three parties, the relationship between the Sun family of River East and the Lu family of Gao Ping was considered good. However, in the face of treasures, the so-called relationship was nothing. Moreover, the two martial Dao masters of the Lu family of Gao Ping were not very famous in Zhonghu. They were inferior to the Sun brothers. Of course, they did not want to give the treasure to others. Although Cheng Tingfeng was alone, he was someone who had been on the list after all. The real strength of the Hidden Sword Villa did not lie in the people, but in the swords they carried. Only God knew what kind of treasured weapon Cheng Tingshan had brought from the Hidden Sword Villa this time. He was not afraid to face the other party alone or in pairs. Just when everyone was in a dilemma, whether to fight it out first to decide the ownership of the place or not to waste time and explore together, Chu Xiao happened to walk over from the side. The moment they saw Chu Xiao, the five people stood together almost at the same time with vigilance in their eyes. At least they were on the same side, and their strength was not much different. However, Chu Xiao was no longer on the same side as them. Just when Cheng Tingshan wanted to warn Chu Xiao first, Chu Xiao had already spoken with a smile on his face. "This place is not bad. Thank you for helping me find it. Now you can leave." Chapter 8:13. Chu Xiao's extremely arrogant attitude almost instantly infuriated Cheng Tingshan and the other two groups. "It's true that you, Chu Xiao, have a great reputation in Zhonghu, and the hidden devil lineage is also very powerful now. But they are not to be trifled with. Why did you, Chu Xiao, ask them to scram the moment he came up?" The three groups of people who were still at loggerheads immediately stood together. Cheng Tingshan said coldly, "Chu Xiao, who do you think you are? Do you really think that you can be comparable to an expert in the true fire spirit refining realm just because you killed a true fire spirit refining realm expert with a trick?" Chu Xiao said indifferently, "I have always known who I am, but unfortunately, you have not seen who you are. A wise man submits to circumstances. Since you don't want to scram, then I will help you scram." As soon as he finished speaking, the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiao's hand was already unsheathed. The monstrous devil qi mixed with endless blood qi and the wailing of hungry ghosts slashed towards Cheng Tingshan and the other four people. All along, most of Chu Xiao's enemies were much stronger than him. Against people like Feng Jinwu and Yuan Tianfeng, Chu Xiao could only use all sorts of crafty plots and schemes, and only after spending a great deal of effort to scheme against them could he kill them. But in fact, most of the time, Chu Xiao did not like to do so. Why make a problem that could be solved with one slash so complicated? Just like now, I have my eyes on this palace. Will you give it to me? If you don't, then I will beat you until you do. He did not know if it was because he knew about his relationship with Dugu Weiwei, but subconsciously, Chu Xiao also thought that Dugu Weiwei's way of doing things was very much to his liking. Under the premise of having absolute power, there was no need to do so many useless things. There was only one word: kill. The power of Chu Xiao's slash caused Cheng Tingshan's expression to suddenly change. In fact, Cheng Tingshan had fought with Chu Xiao more than once. In the past, before Chu Xiao reached the real pellet state, he had already fought with Chu Xiao. Of course, he was at a disadvantage in that battle. If there were no others present this time, he would not dare to say this to Chu Xiao, and he would probably scram. However, he had never expected Chu Xiao's power foundation to be so powerful. In just a few short years of cultivation, Chu Xiu's power foundation was already stronger than what he had cultivated for decades. Cheng Tingshan unsheathed the 7 long swords behind him. One was a divine weapon, and the other 6 were precious weapons. Under the control of his aura, the 7 long swords condensed into the Big Dipper 7-star sword array. In an instant, the starlight shone, and it greeted Chu Xiu's slash. But under the endless surging demonic qi, the entire Big Dipper 7-star sword array collapsed in an instant. 6 of the 7 long swords shattered in an instant, and only one of the divine weapons did not shatter, blocking Chu Xiu's slash. But Cheng Tingshan was also shocked back step by step. At this moment, the Sun brothers had already made a move. One of them punched out, while the other landed a palm strike. Cold ice gang qi erupted with a loud rumble, as if the surroundings, which were like spring all year round, had turned into a frigid winter. The 2 martial artists of the Gao Ping Lu family held long spears in their hands, and they stabbed at Chu Xiu at the same time. The power was also very powerful. When the spear fell, it was like thunder falling from the sky, making bursts of roars and roars. It was said that the Gao Ping Lu family was born in the military, and the ancestor of the Lu family was a general in the dynasty before Eastern Qi. Because of the enmity with the imperial court, he resigned and lived in seclusion. There were very few martial artists in the Jianghu who used the spear as their weapon. The Gao Ping Lu family was born in the military, so the strongest spear technique passed down in their family, the 9th Heaven Thunder Meteorite Spear, could be said to be a sharp weapon in the military. Its power might be a bit ordinary, but if the people of the Lu family used the spear technique together, the power would not be as simple as 1 + 1. The 4 people besieged him. Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hand and displayed the great blood shadow technique. In an instant, the blood roared and roared, and the blood shadows directly met the 4 people around him. All kinds of martial arts exploded, and the 4 people were actually forced to retreat. At the same time, Chu Xiu's figure did not stop at all. He directly slashed at Cheng Tingshan with his blade. Under the powerful momentum of the blade, Cheng Tingshan did not even have the chance to fight back, and could only retreat step by step. Even the divine weapon in his hand, under the attack of the Sky Demon Dance, let out a sorrowful cry, and a crack appeared on its surface. Cheng Tingshan gritted his teeth, and did not even dare to say a word. He directly turned and fled. The martial artists of the Hidden Sword Villa loved their swords as much as their lives. Right now, if he was attacked by Chu Xiu until he vomited blood, he might not retreat. But now that his divine weapon was damaged, he really did not want to fight anymore. Cheng Tingshan's retreat had caused the other 4 to be trapped there. Chu Xiu turned around, and the blood-red demonic qi around him flourished. At that moment, the 4 people who were desperately resisting the blood shadows felt the blood in their bodies begin to boil uncontrollably, as if it was about to rush out of their bodies. Chu Xiu held the Sky Demon Dance in his hand and slashed horizontally in all directions. As the blade fell, the blood in the 4 people's bodies seemed to respond to Chu Xiu's blade, and violently boiled and collided, causing them to vomit blood in an instant. With one slash, all 4 of them were injured. Seeing this scene, the 4 people did not even have the mood to continue fighting. They immediately turned and fled. Moreover, they were afraid that Chu Xiu would pursue them, so they fled in 4 different directions. Looking at their fleeing figures, the corners of Chu Xiu's mouth curled up. But before he could speak, Lu Jiang he spoke on behalf of Chu Xiu in his mind. What a bunch of trash. This group of people is getting worse with each generation. Those fellows from the Hidden Sword Villa have collected a bunch of divine weapons, but the people they use are such trash. It's an insult to the divine swords. The descendants of that old turtle from the Sun family aren't much better. They stay by the river every day, and their strength has also become so weak. It's a pity for the Lu family. Back then, there was someone from the Lu family who dared to challenge the Red Lotus Demon Lord with a spear. Although he died very miserably, he still had the courage. Now, it seems that the Lu family doesn't even have the spear in their pants, let alone the spear in their hands. They're just cowards. Lu Jianghe's tone was one of exasperation. 500 years ago, the pugilistic world was also full of experts and heroes. But now, only this bunch of people were left? Chu Xiu, on the other hand, felt that this was very normal. In times of crisis, countless heroes would naturally emerge. But now that the pugilistic world had been at peace for 500 years, most of the major forces in the pugilistic world were focused on scheming against each other. In such an environment, it was obvious what kind of people could be produced. And now, after Chang Tingshan and the others had fled, they gathered together and were still blaming each other. The Sun brothers and the people from the Lu family of Gao Ping accused Chang Tingshan of fleeing first and leaving them there. Moreover, Chang Tingshan still had a trump card, but he did not use it. The box that Chang Tingshan was carrying on his back definitely contained the most powerful divine sword that the Hidden Sword Villa had collected, but he did not use it just now. When Chang Tingshan heard that, he also scolded the other party for being too useless. He had already stalled Chu Xiu, but in the end, the four of them could not even defeat those blood shadows. They could not even get close to Chu Xiu. After the group of people scolded each other, they had no choice but to turn around and continue searching for other relics and resources. Right now, they had just entered the ruins. Who would be willing to risk their lives now? Moreover, there were 3 groups of people, and they were not of the same mind. If they risked their lives, what about the others? On the other side, Chu Xiu had already entered the White Jade Palace. The White Jade Palace looked extremely magnificent and luxurious from the outside, and it was almost the same inside. There were carved beams and painted pillars everywhere, but the patterns were completely different from the current style. There were some inscriptions that even Chu Xiu could not recognize. Walking further in, there was a half-collapsed hall, surrounded by a circle of exquisite tables and chairs. Chu Xiu also noticed that there were names written on them, but Chu Xiu didn't recognize them. It felt like they were right, but at the same time, they weren't. The current language was inherited from the ancient age. Although it was somewhat different, most of the cultivation technique manuals were written in the ancient age. Chu Xiu could also recognize it, but the language here was confusing. Chu Xiu really could not recognize it. At this moment, Lu Jianghe chuckled and said, "Country bumpkins, right? You junior cultivators are ignorant and incompetent. In the past, when this senior just started cultivating, not to mention these things, I learned array Dao, alchemy Dao, weapon forging and everything else. This senior will teach you. This language is a kind of ancient array pattern. It is obscure and simple, but it is a language that the ancestors of my human race comprehended from the truth of the world. It can absorb a small amount of world energy on its own. However, because these characters were too ancient, so ancient that they couldn't describe things in too much detail, they were abandoned. But on some important occasions, some ancient sects are still willing to use this language to write something short." Chu Xiu ignored Lu Jianghe's smugness and just asked, "What is written on it?" Lu Jianghe said, "It's all the names of some ancient sections: 3 Pure Temple, High Heaven Sect, Heavenly Luo Temple. Hiss. These are the names of those ancient sections. Boy, you have picked up a treasure. This may be the place where those ancient sects hold meetings or preach. Although this is not the ruins of a sect, and you probably won't be able to find any cultivation techniques or anything like that, but in ancient times, it was common for powerhouses to preach the Tao. If you can find some of the experiences and insights recorded by others, it will be of great benefit to you." The ancient times were also a flourishing age of martial arts. Compared to the present, the ancient times may have been more abundant in world yuan qi, so the strength of cultivators was stronger and cultivation was easier. In that era, preaching the Tao was very popular. The masters of all the major sects liked to open forums and preach the Tao. Moreover, there was no discrimination. As long as they were not from hostile sects, they would come to listen to the preaching. Of course, the preaching was only about the experience of martial arts, not about the cultivation techniques of their own sections. At present, this hall was extremely magnificent, and there were the participation of 3 Pure Temple, High Heaven Sect, and other top sections. One could imagine what kind of existence was qualified to preach the Tao here. Chu Xiu had indeed picked up a treasure. Chapter 8:14. When Chang Tingshan and the others found this place, they began to confront each other even before they entered. If they had seen what was inside, they probably would not have let it go so easily. Chu Xiu rummaged back and forth in the palace and found some records engraved on jade talismans or animal skin papers. Almost all the people who came to participate in the sermon brought back what they had recorded. The sermon records that Chu Xiu had found should have been used by the preacher's disciples and grand-disciples as records. They directly wrote down the preacher's description verbatim. Although it seemed a little obscure and difficult to understand, it was less indifferent and closer to the preacher's original meaning. These things could not be digested in a short time, So Chu Xiu only glanced at them briefly and put them away. He planned to carefully study them when he went into seclusion in the future. However, at this time, Chu Xiu found a very strange record in a corner. It was not a record of martial arts explanations, but a meeting record from ancient times. It recorded a discussion that had taken place here, mixed with some of the ideas of the person who recorded it. The content was much more interesting. Longwu Calendar, Gue Hai Year, 17th of September, 3:45 a.m. The sects of the northern region held a meeting to discuss the great plan of opening up the world. The eminent monk of Tianluo Temple said, "All the worlds in the world have experienced the four tribulations of completion, rebirth, destruction, and emptiness. These are the tribulations of the heavens, and it is difficult to preserve even a glimmer of life. It is better to leave the secret box and pass it on. After the four tribulations, a new world will be formed and the world will be reopened." The Taoist master of the Three Pristines Temple said, "Nonsense. The Taoist lineage has experienced hundreds of millions of tribulations to survive. There are 50 great ways, 49 heavenly evolutions, and only one is human. If you don't find a glimmer of life and wait for death, you deserve to die under the tribulations." Note: I think the Taoist master of the Three Pristines Temple has a point. We martial artists cultivate ourselves and understand the world. We exchange our weak bodies for great power. If we only know how to surrender in the face of tribulations, wouldn't we be too useless? Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. It seemed that regardless of whether it was the ancient times or the present, these so-called supreme powerhouses were actually more or less the same. They would also curse when they were angry. The Tao master of the Three Pristines Palace was a man of temperament. During such a discussion, he even dared to point at the other party's nose and scold them. The Imperial Sky Pavilion's pavilion master said that the great building is about to collapse. Regardless of whether we're going to sit here and wait for death or find another way out, we'll have to do it together. The plan to split open the heavens must be carried out, so we must make preparations early. The great calamity is already looming, and it will be too late if we delay. The eminent monk of the heavenly Luo Temple said, "The martial artists of my generation have gone through a tribulation, and so have the myriad worlds. Rumor has it that after experiencing the tribulation of the myriad worlds, the supreme sky of freedom would be formed. Those who entered it would become immortal and become gods. All of you, by splitting open the sky, you are actually going against the heavens, destroying the karma and destiny of this world. You will no longer have the qualifications to enter the sky of freedom. You are harming others, and you are harming yourself." Note: the legend of the sky of freedom has existed for countless years. The Buddhists often call it the sky of ultimate bliss, while the Taoists call it the sky of longevity. Of course, most people still call it the sky of freedom. Rumor has it that in that place, there will be no end to the world, and no one will live, grow old, get sick, or die. It is the residence of gods and Buddhas, and those who enter it will become gods and Buddhas. But does such a place really exist? Others might believe it, but I don't. If everyone becomes immortal and gives birth to children, wouldn't the sky of freedom be filled to the brim? Would it still be the sky of freedom? Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Why was the sky of freedom brought up again? He had never heard of this name before. "You've heard of the sky of freedom?" Chu Xiu suddenly asked Lu Jianghe. Lu Jianghe thought for a while and said, "The master of the Eastern Sea of Freedom?" After hearing Lu Jianghe's words, Chu Xiu suddenly remembered that the master of the Eastern Sea of Freedom was in the eastern and western heavens. Could it be that the mysterious master of the Sky of Freedom was related to the ancient legend of the Sky of Freedom? Or was it that the other party had only heard of this name by chance and thought it sounded good, so he used it as the name of his sect? Chu Xiu was a little confused, so he ignored his doubts and continued reading. High Heaven Sect Master said, "Freedom and longevity are all fabricated. In the face of the great calamity, we do not seek longevity, but seize every moment. If you can't come to the plan of splitting the heavens, my High Heaven sect will do it. Sects of the Northern Territory, as long as you are a subordinate of my High Heaven sect, can submit candidates to participate in the plan of splitting the heavens, but the number of people is limited, and each sect may only have a few people qualified to participate. If you don't want to come, make room for others." Note: the High Heaven sect master is decisive and domineering, and should be a role model for our generation. The Three Pure Temples Tao Venerable said, "My Three Pure Temple agrees, as long as you belong to the Tao sects, the Northern Territory, the Eastern Territory, and the Southern Territory can come to participate in the plan of splitting the heavens. The great calamity is coming, but you bald donkeys are guarding the Western Territory without making any progress, while my Tao sect has already paid with countless lives. Spiritual Treasure Temple's Temple Master, Taoist Crimson Afterglow, in order to protect a county in the Northern Territory, turned his body into the light of the spiritual treasure to suppress the dragon vein, and died. There are only 2 people left in the entire Spiritual Treasure Temple. If we don't think of a way, how many of our 3,000 Tao sects will be left in the end? Note, sad. Spiritual Treasure Temple is one of the few sects in the world that can think for the common people. It is said that in order to resist the great calamity and save the common people, the Spiritual Treasure Temple had 37 people, and only 2 were left. Even the Taoist priest in the kitchen died in the great calamity. Spiritual Treasure Temple's selection of disciples is based on character, comprehension, and talent. Therefore, it is extremely difficult to accept disciples. So many years of hard work have been destroyed in a day. Spiritual Treasure Temple's Temple Master, Taoist Crimson Afterglow, was the most hopeful to step into the martial immortal realm among the martial artists who have reached the heaven and earth metaphysic realm. If he took the last step, Tao sect will have one more Tao Master. What a pity! However, I heard that Tao Master and Taoist Crimson Afterglow had a grudge in the early years. Now that Taoist Crimson Afterglow is dead, and Spiritual Treasure Temple is on the verge of destruction, is Tao Master sincere in his grief, or is he just pretending? Thinking back to a few years ago, I met Taoist Crimson Afterglow's eldest disciple, Taoist Ling Qingzi, and I was impressed by his demeanor. I wonder if Taoist Ling Qingzi escaped the calamity. Dragon Martial Calendar, Year Gui Hai, 17th of September, Shen Shi. Many sects parted on bad terms. Those who agree with the plan of opening the heavens occupy 60%, those who disagree occupy 20%, and the remaining 20% are undecided. Putting away the record, Chu Xiao let out a long sigh. If this thing were to spread, it would definitely cause an uproar in the outside world. This record had already explained a lot of things. As the great calamity of the ancient times approached, those sects did not choose to sit still and wait for death. Instead, they thought of many ways to save themselves, and this plan of opening the heavens was one of them. However, which heavens was this plan of opening the heavens? As for what the so-called sky of freedom was all about, even the ancient sects themselves might not be able to explain it clearly. Moreover, there was a description of the martial immortal realm. It was estimated that it would also cause an uproar. Chu Xiao once found the diary of the little junior brother of Spiritual Treasure Temple in the small mortal realm. It had already said that the big senior brother of Spiritual Treasure Temple was already a martial arts master of the real pellet realm, and his master was a powerhouse of the mysterious heaven and earth realm. However, looking at the notes on this diary, it was obvious that there was a realm above the mysterious heaven and earth realm called martial immortal. In ancient times, there were many people who reached this realm, such as the Tao Master of the Three Pristines Temple. It should be a title. Only those who reached the martial immortal realm were qualified to be called Tao Master. The powerhouses that appeared in the records, the monks of Tianluo Treasure Temple, the Pavilion Master of Royal Sky Pavilion, and the Sect Master of High Heaven Sect were obviously at the same level as the Tao Master. They must have reached the martial immortal realm. Do you know anything about the martial immortal realm? Chu Xiao asked Lu Jianghe. Lu Jianghe said, "Of course I know." Hearing Lu Jianghe's words, Chu Xiao was taken aback. You know? Why haven't I heard anyone mention it? Lu Jianghe said disdainfully, I don't know about the martial immortal realm, but there is a path above the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Even an idiot knows about it. Okay? Think about it, what is the level of the current mysterious heaven and earth realm? In the past, these so-called mysterious heaven and earth realm powerhouses were simply vulnerable in front of the sect master. The sect master of that generation was also in the mysterious heaven and earth realm, but what was the result? Wasn't he still slaughtered by the sect master like a chicken? The sect master has never said that he has surpassed the mysterious heaven and earth realm, but in my opinion, he has already crossed that step long ago. And Ning Xuanji, he can fight evenly with the sect master and is called an immortal. With his strength, does he deserve the title of martial immortal? Chu Xiao patted his head. He had experienced a lot of things recently and was greatly impacted, so he didn't see it as clearly as Lu Jianghe. Not hearing about it didn't mean it didn't exist, but there were too few people in this realm. Because of the loss of ancient books, no one had passed down the name of this realm. So even if Ning Xuanji and Dugu Weiwei had really reached this realm, they might not even know what their realm was called. Chu Xiu didn't delve too deeply into these things. He carefully searched the palace for a while, and after finding nothing good, he prepared to leave. During this period of time, Kuang Sheiyue was also wandering around. Unlike the urgency of the others, who were hurriedly looking for opportunities in the secret realm, afraid that something would go wrong and cause them to end up with nothing, Kuang Sheiyue, on the other hand, was extremely leisurely. It was as if he was taking a walk, looking left and right, and even admiring the surrounding scenery. He couldn't be more leisurely. At this moment, he suddenly felt some movement in front of him. He walked over and saw that it was Chang Tingshan and the other four. They had just finished arguing and were about to leave. At this moment, they were still wondering if they should explore alone or continue working together. When they suddenly saw Kuang Sheiyue, the expressions on their faces immediately changed. The divine generals of the heavenly gates were considered top-notch existences even among the true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses. They didn't know what the other party's attitude was, good or evil. Seeing the five of them, a smile appeared at the corner of Kuang Sheiyue's mouth. He said, "Everyone, did you find anything good? If I'm satisfied, you can leave. If I'm not, I'll kill you." Chapter 8:15. Kuang Sheiyue was a lunatic. A temperamental lunatic. This was what Chu Xiu thought. In fact, he was indeed temperamental. Similar to Divine Lord Luo, he did not take the people of the Jianghu seriously. To be precise, he did not take the people of the Jianghu seriously at all. Other people of the Jianghu had rules, but the Elysium had no rules. The people of the Elysium only followed their own rules. As for the others, he could kill them if he wanted. Sword Concealment Villa, River East Sun Clan, to Kuang Sheiyue, killing them all depended on his mood. Just like now, if Cheng Tingshan and the rest's answers made him happy, he would not kill them. If he was not happy, what he said just now was not a joke. Chang Tingshan and the rest's expressions changed immediately. Before this, they were still cursing Chu Xiu for being overbearing and snatching the relics that they had discovered first. But now they realized that Chu Xiu's overbearing was considered good. This person was completely unreasonable. At this moment, Cheng Tingshan suddenly thought of something. He immediately said, "Sir, we discovered a huge palace relic, but Chu Xiu snatched it before we could enter. Now Chu Xiu should still be there. If you are interested, we can lead the way for you." Kuang Sheiyue's face showed a hint of interest. "Oh, is that so? If that's the case, I'll be very happy. Bring me there." Cheng Tingshan also suddenly thought of what happened between Kuang Sheiyue and Chu Xiu. This divine general of the Elysium seemed to be very interested in Chu Xiu. Cheng Tingshan could also kill him with a borrowed knife. But at this moment, Kuang Sheiyue added, "Of course, if I don't find Chu Xiu, I'll still kill you." Cheng Tingshan and the rest's expressions changed. They finally knew what it meant to be temperamental. But they did not dare to resist. The lunatics of the Elysium would not care about their background, let alone the rules of the Jianghu. Chu Xiu had just walked out of the palace when he bumped into Kuang Sheiyue and the others. Looking at Chu Xiu, Kuang Sheiyue's lips curled into a smile. "Kid, you won't be able to escape from my palm. Don't worry, I don't have any evil intentions towards you. I just want to study how you scared that fellow, Divine Lord Luo, to the point that he crawled back to the Divine Gate. Tisk tisk, it's rare to see that guy in such a sorry state. I'm really curious. Just cooperate with me. Don't worry, it won't hurt." Kuang Sheiyue had just finished speaking when Chu Xiu's demonic aura gathered around him. Two giant hands made of demonic aura rose from behind him, releasing an extreme demonic might. A longbow had already been condensed. With one hand on the bow and 3 arms on the bowstring, the triple-link city-destroying arrow was shot out in an instant. Everything in its path was annihilated. No one, not even Kuang Sheiyue himself, had expected Chu Xiu's attack to be so swift and fierce. In fact, the moment he saw the triple-link city-destroying arrow, his expression became a little dazed. He had seen this arrow before. The Divine Gate had once preserved the video of Dugu Weiwei killing the master of the Divine Gate and slaughtering the 8 great divine generals. Every disciple who joined the Divine Gate had to watch it because it was a disgrace. The disgrace of the Divine Gate. Although it was strange that after the decline of the Kunlun devil cult in the later stages, the master of the Divine Gate had forbidden his disciples from finding trouble with the Kunlun devil cult. However, this video was something that every disciple who joined the Divine Gate had to watch, and they had to watch it very carefully. In the past, Dugu Weiwei had used this arrow to pierce through 2 divine generals of the Divine Gate at the same time, as if he was killing chickens. The 2 of them were skewered together, and then they died. Kwang Sheiyue would never forget that scene for the rest of his life. However, the power of the arrow shot by Chu Xiu clearly could not be compared to that of Dugu Weiwei. In fact, it was not even qualified to be compared. Kwang Sheiyue stretched out his hands, and the sparkling moonlight appeared in his hands. Although the sky was clear, it was as if there was a bright moon in the sky. Everything was destroyed wherever the Triple City extinguishing arrow passed. Even the moonlight dissipated. However, at this moment, Kwang Sheiyue put his hands together, and the moonlight shone brightly. The Triple City extinguishing arrow was forcibly held in his hands. With a loud bang, the moonlight and the arrow were extinguished at the same time, fishing the moon from the water, turning the hand to grasp the sky. Chang Tingshan and the other 4 were dumbfounded as they watched the exchange between the 2 of them. In the past 2 years, Chu Xiu had been hanging around in the northern Yan land. Although his reputation was often spread in the Jianghu, Chang Tingshan and the other 4 did not have a direct understanding of his strength. Even though they had already felt that Chu Xiu was very strong, it was not until Chu Xiu used the Triple City extinguishing arrow that they realized that Chu Xiu was actually this strong. Apart from Chang Tingshan, who could use his trump card, the Divine Sword, to block the power of this arrow, everyone else would definitely die. Of course, what shocked them even more was Kwang Sheiyue. If Chu Xiu's strength was only strong, then Kwang Sheiyue's strength was so strong that it made people tremble. The Triple Annihilation City arrow was so powerful, yet he was able to block it in one move. Wasn't this powerful enough? The violent demonic energy and moonlight shattered, but Chu Xiu had already disappeared. But at this moment, the smile on Kwang Sheiyue's face had already slowly disappeared, and a trace of killing intent had already appeared. Boy, you're courting death. Previously, Kwang Sheiyue was only interested in Chu Xiu because of Divine Lord Luo. But now, he wanted to crush Chu Xiu, who dared to resist him, to death. But at the same time, Kwang Sheiyue was also puzzled. Had Divine Lord Luo been scared off because he saw this arrow? This was somewhat illogical. What Chu Xiu had used was indeed the Triple City extinguishing arrow that he had inherited from Dugu Weiwei. But thinking of his identity as the inheritor of the hidden devil bloodline, it was not strange that he could obtain a part of Dugu Weiwei's martial arts from the past. Just like just now, Kwang Sheiyue only thought of those scenes in the past and was a little absent-minded. But he did not really think that Chu Xiu was Dugu Weiwei. Although Kwang Sheiyue often ridiculed Divine Lord Luo in the Elysium, he also knew that Divine Lord Luo should not be so timid. Kwang Sheiyue's eyes flashed with killing intent. He murmured, "Forget it. After I catch you, I'll cut you open and see what you're hiding." As soon as he finished speaking, Kwang Sheiyue's figure had already turned into a moonlight and disappeared. Chang Tingshan and the others immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Being next to such a temperamental and abnormally powerful guy like Kwang Sheiyue was extremely stressful. And then the 5 of them began to gloat. "Who asked you, Chu Xiu, to rob us of our opportunities and benefits?" Now that they could not get the things in the palace, Chu Xiu could not either. Being targeted by such an abnormally powerful expert, even if Chu Xiu did not die, he would definitely not feel good. Chang Tingshan and the others were right. At the moment, Chu Xiu was indeed not feeling good. The moment Kwang Sheiyue appeared, Chu Xiu already knew what he was going to do. Therefore, he made a prompt decision to attack and use all his strength to repel his opponent, creating time for himself to escape. But he did not expect that the Elysium Divine Generals would all be so strong. Divine Lord Luo was very strong, and so was Kwang Sheiyue. If all the Elysium Divine Generals appeared in the underworld, they would probably be able to take over the entire reputation list. Even Yuan Tianfeng had to use all his strength to withstand Chu Xiu's Triple City destroying arrow. He did not even dare to make the slightest mistake. One mistake and he would be seriously injured. Yet, in the hands of Kwang Sheiyue, it was so effortless. Seeing this, Chu Xiu did not have the intention to fight back. At the moment, Chu Xiu's speed had been raised to the extreme by him. The internal binding seal of the fast and slow 9 words formula was originally known for its speed. However, this speed was only used in fierce combat, as it consumed a lot of vital qi when used over long distances. But now, Chu Xiu relied on his profound strength. He had already exerted the internal binding seal to the extreme and used it to escape. His speed was like flowing light. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to see Chu Xiu's figure clearly. However, Chu Xiu could still feel the extreme killing intent coming from behind him. Kuang Shiyue's speed was not inferior to his, and was even faster. An hour later, a flowing light appeared behind Chu Xiu. Kuang Shiyue sneered and said, "Run? Why don't you keep running? Originally, I was going to let you live after studying you. That would be giving face to those old guys from the Yinma clan. But now, I don't want to study the living anymore. Studying the dead is the same." Moonlight condensed in Kuang Shiyue's hand. The white moonlight was so solid that it actually condensed into a crescent moon scimitar in his hand. As his scimitar slashed down, the whole space seemed to be cut open. Under the power of the scimitar, no matter how fast Chu Xiu's speed was, he could not outrun the space that was being cut open. If he continued to run, he would be cut into 2 before he could escape the range of Kuang Shiyue's scimitar. In an instant, Chu Xiu turned back, drew his scimitar, and slashed. The scimitar's power rushed into the sky, and as the raging wave swept out, it seemed to tear apart and swallow everything in the world. 7 limits. Sea breaking. The 2 powerful scimitars collided, and the whole space seemed to pause. But the next moment, a silent loud sound was heard. Everything around them was torn apart, and the ground was densely covered with scimitar marks that were hundreds of feet long. Kuang Shiyue's scimitar power was broken. He stood where he was and frowned slightly. 7 limits to swallow the heavens and destroy the earth? This scimitar technique should have disappeared after the great ancient calamity. How can someone still know it? Kuang Shiyue seemed relaxed, but Chu Xiu was not feeling well at this moment. During the collision, the terrifying impact even tore his meridians. Fortunately, he had the eternal demon pill, which quickly restored the power in Chu Xiu's body, so he did not vomit blood on the spot. Chapter 8:16. Chu Xiu's heart sank when his sea-cleaving saber did not work. Kuang Shiyue's strength was so deep that even if he went all out, he still could not do anything to him. He could not beat him for the time being. He could not outrun him even if he ran. This was the first time in a long time that Chu Xiu had fallen into such an awkward situation. Kuang Shiyue seemed to have been angered by Chu Xiu's continuous confrontations. He formed a seal with his hands, and moonlight shone around him, forming a hazy moon shadow in the air. Kuang Shiyue bit his fingertip, and blood sprayed out instantly, dyeing the moon shadow red and turning it into a blood moon. Then, it smashed down toward Chu Xiu. The blood moon hung in the sky and fell from the sky. The power was like a landslide, and it directly enveloped an area of thousands of feet around Chu Xiu. The strong pressure sealed the space, leaving no place for Chu Xiu to dodge. Taking a deep breath, the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand emitted an extremely pure demonic aura. Lu Jianghe's eyes suddenly shrank. He recognized it. It was the power of Patriarch Dugu. But this power was very faint. Apart from people like him who had followed Dugu Weiwei for decades, no one else could recognize it. In fact, Chu Xiu did not even notice the changes in his own power. As he slashed out with his saber, the entire space seemed to freeze. Like a painting scroll, it was slashed into 2 by Chu Xiu's saber, and the scarlet blood moon also gradually collapsed. Misty red dust cut. Kuang Shiyue stared at Chu Xiu. This time, he was really surprised. This Chu Xiu could even use the misty red dust cut. Who was he? Is he the second disciple of Dugu Weiwei? If this saber was used by Dugu Weiwei, it might really have the power to cut through space in the world of mortals. But when Chu Xiu used it, it was much weaker. Although Kuang Shiyue's condensed blood moon had been successfully destroyed by that saber strike, he himself had also spat out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that he had suffered a serious backlash, and his strength had been consumed to the extreme. However, right at this moment, a thick mist of blood blossomed around Chu Xiu's body. He had pushed the demonic blood art to its limits and was actually burning his own blood essence in exchange for his own power. Forming a seal with both hands, Chu Xiu spat out an incantation. In an instant, the sky changed color, and the faint wails of ghosts and deities could be heard. This was the starting stance of the great compassion mantra of heaven and earth. No one had ever been able to complete this technique. Kuang Xieyue didn't know about Chu Xiu's background. Suddenly feeling this power, even Kuang Xieyue's expression changed. Previously, whether it was Chu Xiu's triple destruction city arrow or misty red dust chop, because of Chu Xiu's own body, Kuang Xieyue wasn't afraid of them. But in front of this great compassion mantra of devil-wailing heaven, Kuang Xieyue felt an extremely strong threat. This power was enough to hurt his foundation. Kuang Xieyue subconsciously took a few steps back. But at this moment, an even thicker blood mist exploded, and a blood shadow flew out from it at high speed. In the blink of an eye, it had already disappeared without a trace. The horrifying scene in mid-air that had changed the color of heaven and earth also quickly dispersed. Kuang Xieyue's expression immediately darkened. He had actually been fooled by Chu Xiu. Just now, that was only the starting stance of a technique. Kuang Xieyue thought that Chu Xiu wanted to fight it head-on, but in fact, Chu Xiu wanted to escape. With a cold snort, Kuang Xieyue's figure turned into a stream of light and immediately chased after the blood shadow. Just a quarter of an hour after Kuang Xieyue left, there was a sudden movement on the ground, which had been messed up by the two of them. A crimson cocoon appeared from within. In the end, the bloody aura dissipated, revealing Chu Xiu's face, which was as pale as a sheet of paper. After coming out of the blood cocoon, Chu Xiu didn't waste any time. He immediately left in the opposite direction. After walking for more than 10 miles, he found a hidden place, dug out a cave, and went into seclusion to recuperate. Kuang Xieyue thought that Chu Xiu had fooled him, but in fact, Chu Xiu had another trick up his sleeve. That blood shadow was real. It was a blood shadow of the great blood shadow technique. Chu Xiu endured the pain of severing the connection between him and it, and let it escape with a part of his qi and blood. Because that blood shadow had Chu Xiu's qi and blood, its aura was exactly the same as Chu Xiu's. It wouldn't stop until all the power of qi and blood was completely exhausted. After using the Triple City Annihilation Arrow, Seabreaker, and Red Dust Slash, which were extremely powerful but also consumed a lot of energy, Chu Xiu's body was almost at the end of its rope. Even if he used the demonic blood power to burn his essence and blood, it would still be useless. Because he didn't have the confidence to defeat Kuang Xieyue with this move. Therefore, he had to use some small tricks to save his life. He cut off a blood shadow to distract the target, and then he hid in the blood cocoon created by the demonic blood power. Because Chu Xiu had burned his qi and blood before, the power of his qi and blood was very strong. Chu Xiu sealed himself in the blood cocoon, so Kuang Xieyue definitely couldn't sense his aura. He could only sense the remaining qi and blood, so he didn't suspect anything and went straight after that blood shadow. Chu Xiu let out a long sigh. It was rare for him to be in such a difficult situation. At this time, Chu Xiu finally understood the benefits of the Eternal Demon Pill, and why it was called the Eternal Demon Pill. If it was anyone else who had suffered such a consumption and backlash from Chu Xiu, they would have already met the King of Hell. But the Eternal Demon Pill in Chu Xiu's body had released a power from the very beginning, preserving the last trace of Chu Xiu's life source and not letting it be damaged. It could even be said that even if Chu Xiu were to fight Kuang Xieyue with his bare arms, the Eternal Demon Pill would still preserve Chu Xiu's last trace of immortality. It was because of the Eternal Demon Pill that Chu Xiu dared to play like this. Otherwise, the great compassion mantra of the Devil's Lament just now would have been enough to squeeze Chu Xiu dry. It took a day and swallowed countless elixirs. Of course, they were not the blood recovery elixirs produced by the Zhenwu Hall, but the special healing elixirs that Chu Xiu got from miracle Dr. Feng Buping. Only then did he recover 90% of his consumed injuries. Recovering to this state in a day was already the limit, and this was with the help of the Eternal Demon Pill. The remaining 10% needed to be recuperated for a period of time, but it wouldn't affect the next battle. Elysium, Kuang Xieyue. A cold look flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He had never suffered such a big loss. Although Chu Xiu was gnashing his teeth at Kuang Xieyue, he had to admit that the strength of the Elysium was really terrifying. It was known that the Elysium was almost exterminated by Dugu Weiwei. The master of the Elysium was killed, 8 of the 9 divine generals were killed, and 1 was disabled. In the end, relying on such a disabled person, the Elysium returned to its peak within 500 years. This kind of strength was really terrifying. If it were other sects, they might not be able to recover even after thousands of years. After replying, Chu Xiu immediately walked out of the cave where he was cultivating in seclusion. Time could not be delayed in the secret territory. Who knew how long this secret territory could last? After experiencing the great ancient calamity, this kind of space secret territory that existed alone was very unstable and could easily collapse. Therefore, this kind of secret territory usually had a strength limit. If an expert with a certain level of strength entered it, it would cause the secret territory to collapse. Even if no experts entered, if someone triggered some array formation, it might cause the mystic realm to collapse. Therefore, Chu Xiu had to make the best use of his time and continue to explore it. However, as soon as he came out, Chu Xiu sensed that someone was coming. He looked in the direction of the other party and saw a person who was also stunned. He was hundreds of feet away from Chu Xiu, and their gazes met. However, in the next moment, that person immediately turned around and fled. The corner of Chu Xiu's mouth revealed a trace of a sinister smile. The person that Chu Xiu encountered was Duan Tianlang. Just now, when Chu Xiu was being chased, he was in a bad mood. Now that he encountered Duan Tianlang, he could only say that he was unlucky. Duan Tianlang also felt that he was very unlucky. Ever since he entered the mystic realm, he had yet to obtain anything good. Only he and Bu Tiannan from the Blue Dragon Society came here. After the random teleportation, the two of them naturally separated. During this period, he found a few ruins, but they had already been occupied by others. Although the people who entered this place were all competitors, the relationship between them was also very complicated. After the competition, they could also work together without any hindrance. For example, it was normal for the 5 major sword sects or the 9 major families to cooperate. However, the reputation of the Blue Dragon Society in the pugilistic world had always been bad. In addition, with a madman like Bu Tiannan as the leader, the reputation of the Blue Dragon Society was basically similar to that of the demon sections. In this way, no matter who the others chose to ally with, they would not choose to ally with him. Therefore, Duan Tianlang did not obtain anything useful in the past 2 days. In the end, he actually encountered an enemy like Chu Xiu. It was simply bloody bad luck. The speed of the inner binding seal was pushed to the extreme by Chu Xiu. His figure left an afterimage and went straight to Duan Tianlang. In less than a quarter of an hour, the distance between the two had shrunk from 100 feet to about 100 feet. The heavenly demon dance slashed down, and the monstrous demonic energy with an incomparably horrifying bloody aura crashed down with majestic power. Duan Tianlang hurriedly turned around and stretched out his hand. The aura within 100 feet of him completely wrapped around Chu Xiu's slash, wanting to crush it. However, the power of this slash was too great. It directly broke through Duan Tianlang's black spatial divine claw, and the remaining demonic energy instantly blew Duan Tianlang away. In the past, when Duan Tianlang chased after Chu Xiu even had to use all his strength to resist his black spatial divine claw. But now, he also had to use all his strength to resist a casual slash from Chu Xiu, and it was somewhat difficult for him to do so. Everything was predestined. Now that Chu Xiu and Duan Tianlang had completely switched roles, the feeling of revenge was quite good. Chapter 8:17. With just one slash, Duan Tianlang felt a life-and-death crisis. He knew that the gap between him and Chu Xiu was very big, but he didn't expect it to be so big. Duan Tianlang gritted his teeth. Before Chu Xiu slashed for the second time, his whole body was already burning with a majestic power of blood. He actually chose to burn his blood essence to escape. Chu Xiu sneered when he saw this. Burning his blood essence in front of him, Duan Tianlang was courting death. When the blood divine demonic technique was activated, all the surrounding power of blood, whether it was Chu Xiu's own or others, was under his control. In an instant, Duan Tianlang felt that his whole body was boiling. His own blood essence was actually out of his control. Duan Tianlang clenched his teeth as he watched the blood-red shadows fly out from Chu Xiu's surroundings, bringing with them a terrifying aura to attack him. His body was enveloped by a layer of green light, and he disappeared in the blink of an eye like a swimming dragon. Chu Xiu frowned, and he retracted the blood shadow technique. Duan Tianlang really didn't expect this guy to have such a move. This speed was even similar to the speed when Kuang Sheyuet chased him before. Lu Jiang, he sneered and said, "This kid must be afraid of you to the extreme." Chu Xiu said in surprise. Why do you say so? Lu Jiang, he said, this kid is using the Blue Dragon Society's Azure Dragon embodiment mystic art, but the real strength of this mystic art is in close combat. It is extremely fierce and powerful, but the backlash is not small. Therefore, only martial artists who have stepped into the real fire god refinement realm can cultivate it. Earlier, Xiao Chen's move was Return of the Azure Dragon. In an instant, he could raise his speed to the limit. However, he now gave up the latter half of the attack, leaving only the first move, so he can barely use it with his real pellet state cultivation. But look at him. Even if he manages to escape, he won't be able to withstand this power. Even if he doesn't die, he'll be heavily injured. Normal people wouldn't cultivate the escaping part of a secret technique. This kid is probably afraid that you'll kill him even in his dreams, so he doesn't learn anything else but the escaping secret technique first. Needless to say, Lu Jianghe's analysis was pretty good. Duan Tianlang really thought so back then. Duan Tianlang flattered Bu Tiannan very clearly. He finally made Bu Tiannan happy and gave him the Azure Dragon Incarnation secret technique, but he could not learn it. This made Duan Tianlang very depressed. However, because he was always worried about Chu Xiu's revenge, he gritted his teeth and took the initiative to learn this life-saving move. He didn't expect to really use it today. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and continued to chase after Duan Tianlang. Duan Tianlang's mystic art definitely couldn't last long. He didn't believe that Duan Tianlang could escape from his palm. However, after chasing for more than 10 miles, the traces became fainter and fainter. This made Chu Xiu a little surprised. Duan Tianlang is actually quite persistent. He can actually hold on until now. Chu Xiu did not plan to continue the chase because he could vaguely hear the sounds of a battle coming from the top of a tall mountain that resembled a long sword. The aura coming from it was very familiar to Chu Xiu. There was Feng Qishao, Lu Fengxian, Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian. These 4 people are so coincidental that they all met at the same time? Chu Xiu directly gave up chasing Duan Tianlang, who had escaped somewhere, and went straight to the peak. The higher he went, the steeper it became. This peak seemed to be deliberately carved out by someone. It was in the shape of a long sword. When Chu Xiu climbed to the top, the 4 were fighting fiercely. Zhong Xian was holding the Ming King seal and fighting fiercely with Lu Fengxian. Although Lu Fengxian's strength was not weak, he was still promoted to the real pellet state later than Zhong Xian. Although he was born with divine power, he was not as strong as Zhong Xian's power foundation, so even if he had an unparalleled divine weapon in his hand, he was still suppressed. As for Feng Qishao, it was much more lively. He shouted while fighting with Zhang Qingzhen. It was unknown whether he was bursting out of his talkative attribute or he wanted to use verbal attacks to harass Zhang Qingzhen. Hey, Zhang Qingzhen, you are too much. I found this place first. You, the dignified little celestial master, also want to snatch things? Damn, you are still using weapons? Your slaying evil is ranked 10th in the famous sword manual, and my shocking salamander is only 21st. Aren't you embarrassed to take it? If you have the ability, put down your weapon and let's have a fair fight. Bah! Shameless. Where are you going to fight? Do you think a Taoist can't find a woman, and you are jealous of my lower body's sexual happiness? Although Feng Qishao's side was shouting and looked very imposing, he was suppressed by Zhang Qingzhen very badly. The gap between the two could be said to be quite obvious. At this time, when Chu Xiu came, the 4 people fighting stopped and looked at Chu Xiu. Zhong Xian was expressionless, Zhang Qingzhen moved his eyebrows slightly, and Feng Qishao and Lu Fengxian were all happy. Feng Qishao laughed. Ha! Brother Chu, you came at the right time, let's besiege this shameless Taoist together. To be able to say besieging so openly, it was unknown whether it was Feng Qishao who was shameless or Zhang Qingzhen who was shameless. Chu Xiu didn't make a move. He just walked over and asked, "What's the situation? Did you find the treasure?" Feng Qishao pointed at the mountain and said, "This is an ancient sword sect, a sword testing ground of the world sword sect. Of course, it's not the weapon, but the swordsmen themselves. There are sword puppets guarding it. In the past, when the world sword sect was still around, as long as a swordsman passed the sword puppet trial, he would be able to obtain a treasure guarded by the sword puppet. With it, he would have the qualification to go down the mountain to roam the world, and that treasure is your trump card. These things are all recorded in the ancient books of our Sword King city. This is one of the many trial grounds of the world's sword sect. There are 3 sword puppets on it that are intact, and there must be something in their bodies. Previously, we didn't have enough people, but now we do. Since they couldn't beat Zhang Qingjin and the others in a 2-on-2 fight, Feng Qishao didn't have anything to be embarrassed about now. Chu Xiao said in a deep voice, "The 2 of you go kill the sword puppets and get the treasure. I'll block them." Feng Qishao was stunned, and the way he looked at Chu Xiao changed. "Brother, why are you so arrogant now? That's Zhang Qingjin and Zhong Xian, not some Tom, Dick, and Harry." But seeing Chu Xiao's serious face, Feng Qishao didn't say much. He directly pulled Lu Fengxian and went to kill the sword puppets. Chu Xiao wasn't a person who liked to joke, especially on this occasion. He shouldn't be joking. But now that Chu Xiao said so, it meant that he had a certain degree of certainty to do so. Zhang Qingjin glanced at Chu Xiao with a slightly surprised gaze. "You don't think that after stepping into the real pellet state, only you, Chu Xiao, have improved, and we are all standing still?" Chu Xiao shook his head and said, "Of course not, but I have confidence in myself." Zhang Qingjin smiled and said, "Coincidentally, I am also very confident in myself." As soon as he spoke, before Zhang Qingjin made a move, Zhong Xian had already blasted out a punch. The Buddha's power was mighty and shook the world. For people like Zhong Xian, his thinking was very simple. If you want to fight, then fight. He didn't care about being besieged. Moreover, recently in the Great Light Temple, he had more contact with Su Du after the 2 of them joined forces to kill Yuan Tianfang last time. Su Du was extremely respectful of Chu Xiao. This even made Zhong Xian, who had no intention of winning, want to see how strong Chu Xiao was now. Zhang Qingjin squinted his eyes, and he didn't make a move immediately. Instead, he wanted Zhong Xian to see how strong Chu Xiao was. Chu Xiao had his pride, and Zhang Qingjin also had his pride. In the past, in the Longhu list, Zhang Qingjin dominated the Longhu list for more than 10 years. In the entire younger generation, only Zhong Xian could compete with him. Although there was an additional Chu Xiao in the later stage, he still suppressed so many people. He was the first to step into the real pellet state, and he even condensed the Thunder Golden Core. But for a period of time, the Taoist master's mansion was closed, and he rarely made a move. On the other hand, Chu Xiao killed the powerhouse of the real fire spirit refinement state and became famous in the underworld. So in this way, the entire underworld was also divided into 2 factions. One faction thought that among the younger generation, the most terrifying was still Chu Xiao, who already had the strength to kill the real fire spirit refinement state powerhouse. But there was another faction of people who thought that Chu Xiao could kill the real fire spirit refinement state because of tricks. In terms of real strength, Little Celestial Master was better. These people were arguing there, but the people involved didn't care much. Whether it was for Chu Xiao or for Zhang Qingjin, when do they ever care about other people's opinions? In their hearts, there was only one idea in common, that was, they would never be weaker than others. At this time in the field, Chu Xiao had already fought with Zhong Xian. Both of them walked the path of incomparably violent fighting style, directly using brute force to kill, opening and closing with brute force. When Zhong Xian fought with Chu Xiao in the past, he was already weaker than Chu Xiao. But since the last time he stepped into the martial Dao Grand Master realm, he began to return to the Great Light Temple to train hard, and Su Ci, Su Yun, and Su Du had taken turns to guide him. This kind of treatment was not available to ordinary Great Light Temple disciples. Especially Su Du, although this person didn't seem very reliable, his understanding of martial arts was unique, which benefited Zhong Xian a lot. At this time, when Zhong Xian attacked, endless Buddha's light appeared behind him, among which were the prison-guarding Wisdom King, the immovable Wisdom King, and dozens of Wisdom King phantoms hovered behind him. As Zhong Xian's palm fell, the Wisdom King was furious, slaying evil and subduing demons. Zhong Xian's move even had the scene of thousands of gods and Buddhas merging into one when Su Du faced Yuan Tianfang in the past. The only difference was that Zhong Xian only cultivated the power of the immovable Wisdom King. In an instant, endless bloodlight emerged in Chu Xiao's eyes. On the heavenly demon dance, blood qi and demonic qi surged. As the saber slashed down, endless twisted bloodlines extended to the heavenly demon dance. This saber seemed to have flesh and blood, as well as a soul. As the blood mist and demonic qi surged, it had already slashed toward Zhong Xian's Wisdom King seal. Chapter 8:18. As the martial art that Lu Jianghe was most proud of, the demonic blood technique of the blood god was not as simple as the strengthened version of the demonic blood technique. The main use of the demonic blood technique was to guide the opponent's qi and blood in battle and devour the opponent's qi and blood to cultivate. It could only be said to be a quick technique. However, the effect of the demonic blood technique was not on the demon, but on the spirit, which was the use of the power of qi and blood. The power of qi and blood was the foundation of a martial artist, and it was the source of all divine forms. As Chu Xiu's saber slashed down, Chu Xiu's power of qi and blood extended into the demonic dance. In Chu Xiu's perception, the demonic dance seemed to have truly fused with Chu Xiu as one. The majestic power of qi and blood exploded, and the Wisdom King phantoms shattered one after another. A violent rumbling sound even attracted the attention of Feng Qishao and Lu Fengxian, who were fighting with the sword puppets above. Feng Qishao murmured, "One with a saber? That can't be. Even Chu Xiu's martial arts can achieve one with a saber?" When a martial artist's compatibility with the weapon reached a certain level, such a change would occur, and the power would become even stronger. For example, the sword cultivators of the 5 major sword sects, such as Sword King City, loved the sword as much as their lives. What they pursued was the realm of one with the sword. It was not just in terms of philosophy, but the unity of the primordial spirit and the body. As long as the sword existed, the person existed. If the sword was destroyed, the person would die. Take the Wind Cloud Sword Tomb for example. After the experts of the Wind Cloud Sword Tomb died, their sword spirits also died and were buried together with them. Feng Qishao believed that others could reach this realm, but how could someone like Chu Xiu, who had a complicated martial art, cultivate the saber Dao to this level? It was not fair. At this moment in the battlefield, after Chu Xiu gained the upper hand with a single slash, strands of blood threads bloomed around him, and there was even a bloody mist that enveloped his entire body. With every slash, the bloody mist would become denser. In the end, it actually directly enveloped Chu Xiu's entire body, and the baleful blood energy ceaselessly corroded the Buddhist light. Zhongxian's eyes were shrouded in Buddhist light. Behind him, the alchemist glazed light king's Buddha image shone brightly, releasing spots of silver-white Buddhist light. He wanted to break through the cover of the blood mist, but it was to no avail. It was actually very easy to deal with a martial artist like Zhongxian, but it was also very difficult. To put it simply, as long as one's strength and foundation were superior to his opponent's, then there was no need to consider any changes at all. One could directly confront his opponent head-on and defeat him. But the difficult thing was, who among martial artists of the same level could guarantee that their strength and foundation could compare to Zhongxian's? Unfortunately, Chu Xiu was one of them. Seeing that Zhongxian had been forced to the extreme, Zhang Qingzhen finally made a move. Lightning flashed, and the 5 Thunders True technique was cast. As the lightning fell, the blood mist was smashed by the lightning in an instant. Zhang Qingzhen's body was shining with lightning. With a wave of his hand, Divine Firmament Heavenly Thunder, Purple Heaven Divine Thunder, En Extreme Yang Thunder and so on were cast out from his hands. Half of the mountainside was instantly shrouded by lightning. As soon as Zhang Qingzhen made a move, even Chu Xiu's face was a little moved. Even Feng Qishao's face above was a little ugly. The reason was very simple. When Zhang Qingzhen fought with him just now, he didn't even use 70% of his strength, and he was still struggling to resist. This was a bit of a blow to him. For nearly a year in the Taoist Master Mansion, Zhang Qingzhen rarely appeared in the eyes of the people of the martial arts world. At this time, it was the first time he used his full strength after stepping into the real pellet state. This power was simply terrifying. Chu Xiu waved one hand and boundless blood-colored shadows condensed out from his body. Some of them surged with sword qis, some of them formed Buddhist seals, and some of them unleashed blood-colored lightning techniques. All of them attacked Zhang Qingzhen. Countless martial arts changed, which made Zhang Qingzhen frown. Because one of the blood shadows cast the thunder of his Taoist Master Mansion. Although the thunder was basically cast by blood qi, Zhang Qingzhen could see at a glance that it was definitely the unique application of Taoist Master Mansion's thunder. Zhang Qingzhen's left hand shone with black Yin thunder, and his right hand shone with hot Yang thunder. Thunder was Yang, and thunder was Yin. Thunder was originally a powerful martial arts evolved from the power of Yin and Yang of Taoism. As the power of Yin and Yang in Zhang Qingzhen's hands merged, in an instant, the thunder flashed in mid-air, and the boundless thunderclouds of dozens of miles completely shrouded the mountainside. There was a loud bang, and countless thunderbolts fell like thundersnakes dancing wildly. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, Zhongxian, who had been suppressed by Chu Xiao, formed a complicated Buddha gesture in his hand, and a tiny golden light bloomed from his palm. That golden light evolved into the infinite Buddhist kingdom. But it was not Buddha who suppressed the entire Buddhist kingdom, but a hell-guarding wisdom king. The Buddhist Dharma is boundless. In an instant, the Buddhist kingdom directly broke through the boundless blood mist and shrouded Chu Xiao. Whether it was Zhang Qingjin or Zhongxian, they once stood at the peak of the younger generation of the martial arts world. Although the momentum they created during this period of time was not as strong as Chu Xiao's, it did not mean that they were weaker than Chu Xiao. The two of them attacked at the same time, and even Feng Qishao murmured, F***CK. Brother Chu seems to have gone too far this time. Brother Lu, should we go and save him? Lu Fengxian looked down and shook his head. There's no need. Brother Chu's potential is stronger than you think. During this period of time, Lu Fengxian had been staying by Chu Xiao's side, and he had seen how strong Chu Xiao's strength was. Even an existence like Yuan Tianfeng was defeated by Chu Xiao. Zhang Qingjin and Zhongxian were strong, and at least Lu Fengxian was not a match for them. But that did not mean that Chu Xiao was not a match for them. Those who had been around Chu Xiao for a long time would always have a subconscious illusion that no matter when or what kind of trouble they encountered, as long as Chu Xiao was there, he could solve it. This was not just trust, but also the confidence that Chu Xiao's near-undefeated record had given them for such a long time. At this time, the pressure on Chu Xiao had reached its peak. Zhongxian and Zhang Qingjin. These two were dragons and phoenixes among men. They were both at the peak of the younger generation, and their strength was unfathomable. At this time, when the two of them attacked with all their strength, the pressure on Chu Xiao was even greater than when he faced Feng Jinwu. So at this moment, Chu Xiao didn't care that his strength had not recovered to its peak. A mysterious aura spread out from the demonic dance. In an instant, the world was frozen. The demonic blade slashed out as if the world was torn apart like a painting scroll. Ethereal mortal slash. This extreme demonic blade slashed through the immeasurable Buddha kingdom, and it also slashed through the thunderclouds in the sky. It even left a huge and hideous blade mark of thousands of meters on the entire mountainside. It looked extremely horrifying. At this moment, not far from the mountainside where Chu Xiao and the others fought, some martial artists of various sects had already gathered. They were all watching the battle. Seeing the battle between Chu Xiao and the others, this group of people could be said to be taking a deep breath. They were also at the real pellet state, but when they saw that a junior like Chu Xiao could show such strength, they all had a feeling that they had lived in a dog's stomach all these years. What shocked them the most was that Chu Xiao was able to block the offensive of Zhang Qingjin and Zhongxian 1 versus 2. I'm afraid that the position of the top young generation will really change hands in the future. But at this time, Chu Xiao was not feeling well either. For the ethereal mortal slash, Chu Xiao would consume a lot of his energy to execute a slash. If he executed another slash, he would probably be drained again. Hey, you two haven't taken down that sword puppet yet? I can't hold on any longer. Chu Xiao shouted at the top of the mountain. When Lu Fengxian heard this, she immediately began to attack the sword puppet with all her strength. Feng Qishao curled his lips and said, Don't rush me, this is a puppet specially made by the sword sect in the past to test their disciples. It's different from the stuff made by the Xian Wu sect. Damn, this thing is cheating. The material of this puppet can even absorb true qi. If you come up, you won't be able to deal with it in a short time. Although he said so, Feng Qishao still seized the time and attacked the sword puppet. Just when Zhang Qingjin and Zhongxian wanted to continue to attack, a figure jumped up from below and shouted, Chu Xiao, I'll fight you. The figure that suddenly appeared turned out to be Yi Tianxia. At this time, he was holding the blood dragon spear with a faint excitement on his face. The most important thing was that his strength had reached the real pellet state. It had only been more than a day. Even if Yi Tianxia's cultivation had reached the required level, he didn't need to cultivate behind closed doors to stabilize his cultivation after breaking through to the real pellet state. Yi Tianxia must have obtained some benefits in the secret realm. He could be said to be the luckiest group. But seeing Yi Tianxia's attack at this time, Zhang Qingjin and Zhongxian both frowned, and their eyes flashed with a hint of disgust. They knew what Yi Tianxia was planning. It was nothing more than seeing that Chu Xiao was a little exhausted at this time, so he wanted to take the opportunity to take advantage. They didn't care about reputation, but Yi Tianxie cared about reputation the most since he stepped into the underworld. At this moment, Chu Xiu had just fought fiercely with Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian. He was obviously exhausted, and his strength had been greatly weakened at this time. If Yi Tianxie attacked Chu Xiu at this time, once he won, although the people in the underworld wouldn't be stupid enough to think that Yi Tianxie was stronger than Chu Xiu, Zhang Qingzhen, and Zhong Xian, at least he could ride on the popularity of the three of them to increase his reputation in the underworld. This kind of method wasn't glorious, and it seemed a bit despicable, at least for Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian. Although they didn't dare to say that they were honorable, they disdained to use this way to gain reputation. So the moment Yi Tianxie made his move, they stopped at the same time. Chu Xiu suddenly sneered. This Yi Tianxie must be crazy to become famous. He even dared to use me as a stepping stone. Did he just step into the real pellet state, and he became arrogant? Boundless blood qi converged, and in an instant, the blood-colored demonic qi poured down like a long river. Indistinctly, the cries of hungry ghosts could be heard. Yi Tianxie, who just looked brave and rushed forward with a spear, didn't stay for a second, and he was directly slashed away by Chu Xiu's saber. Chapter 8:19. Chu Xiu was right. Yi Tianxie was just a little arrogant. Of course, this was also thanks to Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu had almost never had a head-on conflict with Yi Tianxie during this period of time, Yi Tianxie was extremely aggrieved because of Chu Xiu. In the previous war between the moon-worshipping cult and the demons, Yi Tianxie came to help the moon-worshipping cult on behalf of the evil extreme sect, but he was ridiculed by the moon-worshipping cult's holy maiden for not contributing as much as an outsider Chu Xiu. Then, in the floating snow city incident in the extreme north, he was also a famous figure on the Longhu list, but he was defeated by Xiao Tian, who had just stepped into the real pellet state. He was just about to find someone to take revenge, but Yan Lu Bing was easily defeated by Chu Xiu. After being aggrieved for so long, Yi Tianxie's luck was not bad. As soon as he entered the secret realm, he got a chance that allowed him to successfully step into the real pellet state. And because he cultivated the Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra, which was a vicious beast technique, he didn't need to rest behind closed doors after stepping into the real pellet state like most martial artists. At this time, seeing Chu Xiu fighting fiercely with Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian, he really didn't dare to come up under normal circumstances. But now Chu Xiu was obviously a little exhausted. If he didn't make a move now, when would he? Yi Tianxie's calculation was quite good, but unfortunately, he still overestimated himself, or underestimated Chu Xiu. The moment Chu Xiu slashed out with his saber, Yi Tianxie immediately felt an irresistible force coming towards him. The force was so strong that even if he tried his best to resist, he was still blown away by the slash. If it weren't for the fact that he cultivated the Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra, which made his physical body extremely strong, maybe he would be seriously injured under that slash. The others around also looked at Yi Tianxie with a hint of ridicule in their eyes. Among the younger generation, there were obviously several levels of strength. Chu Xiu, Zhang Qingzhen, and Zhong Xian were undoubtedly in the first class. Yi Tianxie was not even at the second level, but he still wanted to challenge Chu Xiu. This was purely asking for trouble. But at this time Feng Qi Xiao, who was fighting the sword puppet above, suddenly shouted, F***CK. What's this? As his voice fell, a dazzling sword light rose from above. The cold light shone, and the sword energy spread out for hundreds of miles. At this moment, everyone's attention was attracted. On the mountain peak, there was a fragment of a sword puppet under Feng Qi Xiao's feet. Clearly, the sword puppet had been destroyed by Feng Qi Xiao. However, there was a long sword floating in midair, surrounded by piercingly cold sword qi. The long sword seemed to be made of bronze, exuding a simple and desolate feeling. However, the edge of the sword was scarlet red like blood rust, yet it was also red like fire, and it emitted an extremely piercingly cold killing intent. Seeing the appearance of the sword, Feng Qi Xiao was the first to react and directly rushed toward the long sword. However, before he could reach it, he was blown away by the powerful sword intent. At this moment, the others also reacted and shouted, It's Slaying Red Dragon! Slaying Red Dragon, ranked 7th in the world-famous sword manual. This was a divine weapon that only existed in legends. It was said that in ancient times, There was a red dragon, ferocious beast that caused trouble. Many heroes wanted to kill it, but they were all swallowed into the belly of the beast. A swordsmithing master's wife and daughter had also accidentally died in the mouth of the red dragon. So, in a rage, he used his own chi and blood to forge a sword and gave it to a good friend so that the friend could use it to kill the red dragon. When the sword was forged, the swordsmithing master also died due to the exhaustion of his chi and blood. After the swordsmithing master's good friend used the sword to kill the red dragon, he buried it together with the swordsmithing master and disappeared. Everyone thought that this was just a legend, but they did not expect that this divine weapon that only existed in legends would really appear before their eyes today. At this moment, Feng Qixiao was so regretful that even his intestines were green. If he had known that there was a divine sword ranked in the top 10 of the world-famous sword manual, he would have reserved some strength and not destroyed the sword puppet completely. What the hell was the World Sword Sect doing? Wasn't this a sword puppet for disciples to use for training? Even if they wanted to give the trial takers some life-saving trump cards, there was no need to throw out such a divine weapon. Was this a trump card or a big gift bag? When the slaying red dragon appeared, the eyes of the martial artists who were watching earlier lit up, and they directly rushed toward the mountain peak. Previously, they had only been watching because they did not see anything good. It was equivalent to watching a show, and they did not want to interfere with the competition between the younger generation. But now that a divine weapon had appeared, they could not care less about the younger generation. Even martial artists who did not use swords could not resist the temptation of the 7th-ranked divine sword in the world-famous sword manual. The crowd swarmed up, and Feng Qixiao and Lu Fengxian could not resist at all. However, the sharpness of the swordsmanship on the slaying red dragon shone brightly for a moment, and the surrounding people could not get their hands on it for a while. Divine weapons had spirits, and it was not so easy to become the master of a divine weapon. Just when Chu Xiao wanted to go up and fight for the slaying red dragon, an angry shout with hatred suddenly came, "Chu Xiao!" Chu Xiao turned around and saw two people climbing up the mountain. One of them had an extremely pale face, to the extent that there was no blood. It was Duan Tianlang, who had used a secret method to escape from Chu Xiao. Now, Duan Tianlang actually had the courage to appear in front of him because Bu Tiannan was standing beside him. Looking at Chu Xiao, Bu Tiannan sneered and said, "Boy, you really dare to attack. This is the 5 dragon heads of my Blue Dragon Society. What did I say? If you kill him, I will kill you." Chu Xiao frowned. Bu Tiannan, this madman, was actually here. This was a bit troublesome. What he hated the most was dealing with a madman like Bu Tiannan, because Bu Tiannan had no scruples at all. However, at this moment, Chu Xiao suddenly saw something and immediately retreated. Bu Tiannan sneered and said, "Those old fellows from your Yinma clan are here? Apart from Elder Wei, I really don't care about those useless chickens and dogs." The person Chu Xiao found was not someone from the Yinma clan, but the Jianen king of Sword King City, Du Guli. Seeing Chu Xiao running in his direction, Du Guli frowned. He thought that Chu Xiao wanted to use his relationship with Feng Qixiao to get him to save him. Although Sword King City was not an extreme righteous sect like the Great Light Temple, they would still draw a clear line between them and the demonic path. It was fine that 7th young Master Feng and Chu Xiao had an ambiguous relationship, and Du Guli couldn't care less about it. However, Chu Xiao was delusional if he wanted to save him. Just as Du Guli was about to refuse, Chu Xiao suddenly said, "Senior Du Gu, how about we make a deal? You help me block Bu Tiannan, and I will help Brother Feng fight for the slaying Scarlet Dragon. Lu Fengxian and Brother Lu will also help Brother Feng. You know my friendship with Brother Feng, and Brother Lu and I are not sword users. As long as you agree, the 7th divine sword in the world-famous sword manual will belong to Feng Qixiao." Du Guli was stunned. He thought that Chu Xiao was here to ask for help, but he did not expect Chu Xiao to first talk about a deal. However, the temptation of the slaying Scarlet Dragon, which was ranked 7th in the world-famous sword manual, was too great. It was so great that he could completely ignore Chu Xiao's identity. Thus, Du Guli only thought about it for a few seconds before agreeing, "Okay." With that, Du Guli directly blocked Bu Tiannan's path. Feng Qixiao, who was fighting for the slaying Scarlet Dragon with a group of warriors, couldn't help but slap his head. His martial granduncle was an honest person, but he was tricked by Chu Xiao just like that. He still didn't realize that Bu Tiannan's first target was Chu Xiao, and the slaying Scarlet Dragon came second. Thus, even if Du Guli didn't help Chu Xiu stop Bu Tiannan, he could still fight for the slaying Scarlet Dragon first. However, there were only him and Bu Tiannan at the true fire spirit refinement realm, so he subconsciously regarded Bu Tiannan as the biggest threat. Moreover, Chu Xiu secretly changed his mind and regarded himself as the key to fighting for the slaying Scarlet Dragon. Du Guli didn't have time to react and subconsciously agreed. Of course, even if Feng Qishao saw through him, he wouldn't expose him. He even wanted to ask his martial granduncle to help Chu Xiu. Seeing Du Guli blocking in front of him, Bu Tiannan raised his eyebrows and said, "Old Du Gu, since when did your Sword King city become so nosy? Are you sure you dare to attack me?" Du Guli was definitely considered a senior among the many true fire spirit refinement realm warriors. At the same time, he had a fiery temper, so he immediately exploded when he heard this. "Bu Tiannan, other people might be afraid of your Blue Dragon Society, but do you think my Sword King city is afraid of you? If you really have the ability, why don't you set up a branch of the Blue Dragon Society in the western regions?" Bu Tiannan revealed a grim smile. As soon as his voice fell, his figure had completely turned into a cyan streamer. His figure was like a soaring dragon. As his claw fell down, the cyan gang chi turned into a dragon claw with a loud bang. The ferocious killing intent was integrated into that claw, which made the surrounding world instantly freeze. Du Guli coldly snorted and used the sky-burning sword art. The sky was filled with sword shadows burning with scorching flames. One hot and one cold, the two forces collided and intersected, causing a shockwave that was enough to make people instantly raise their eyebrows. The two only exchanged one move, and Du Guli let out a muffled groan. His eyes flashed with a look of disbelief. Bu Tiannan's strength was truly terrifying to this extent. In the past, Du Guli was defeated by Eastern Emperor Tai of the moon-worshipping sect. Among all the true fire spirit refinement realm warriors in the Jianghu, Eastern Emperor Tai was definitely the strongest. Now that he was facing Bu Tiannan, Du Guli actually felt like he was facing Eastern Emperor Tai. Even if Bu Tiannan's strength was not as strong as Eastern Emperor Tai's, it was probably not that far off. It seemed like he was at a disadvantage when he agreed to Chu Xiu's conditions. However, now was not the time for Du Guli to go back on his words. Once Bu Tiannan started fighting, he was simply like a madman. His killing intent was overflowing, and he didn't care about probing and so on. He directly used his full strength, and after a few moves, he had already suppressed Du Guli to the point where he couldn't breathe. Chapter 8:20. Du Guli was struggling to resist Bu Tiannan while Chu Xiu was helping Feng Qishao fight for the Red Dragon Slayer. The chaotic battle was exactly what Chu Xiu was best at. He used the blood shadow technique to the extreme, and countless blood shadows flew around him. Even Zhang Qingjin and Zhong Xian were not as lethal as Chu Xiu. As seventh young Master Feng charged through the crowd, he complained to Zhang Qingjin, "I say, Brother Zhang, no matter what, you and I are old acquaintances. It wasn't easy for me to get this godly sword. Can't you just let me have it once? You already have evil slaying, so why do you still want to fight with me for this sword? How about giving me some face?" Zhang Qingjin's treatment could be said to be the best among the younger generation of martial artists. From the moment he was born, as long as he didn't die young, he would be the future heir of the Celestial Master Mansion. From then on, the divine sword in the Celestial Master Mansion, which was ranked 10th in the famous sword book, was sealed for Zhang Qingjin's use in the future. Compared to Zhang Qingjin's treatment, Feng Qishao and Chu Xiu were basically raised by a stepmother. However, Zhang Qingjin didn't answer Feng Qishao at this time. Instead, he casually waved his hand, and endless lightning bolts fell down, which was considered as an answer to Feng Qishao. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly sent a voice transmission to Feng Qishao, "Stop fooling around. Watch my movements later. You must keep up with me. Since your ancestor helped me stop Bu Tiannan, I will give you a big gift." Feng Qishao was stunned and looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. With so many people fighting for the Red Dragon Slayer, how could Chu Xiu be so confident? However, before Feng Qishao could think further, Chu Xiu had already made his move. Surging and pure devil qi condensed behind Chu Xiu, and a pair of arms made of devil qi appeared behind Chu Xiu. As Chu Xiu's hands formed a seal, a terrifying aura condensed in Chu Xiu's hands, and a ferocious demonic longbow materialized. With one hand holding the bow and the other holding the bowstring, the Triple City Annihilation arrow shot out. The arrow that Chu Xiu shot with almost all of his strength was not aimed at Zhang Qingzhen, Zhong Xian, or anyone else. Instead, it was shot directly at the Scarlet Dragon Slayer. Everywhere it passed, everything was annihilated. The powerful energy caused everyone's hearts to tremble, and they couldn't help but avoid it. When Chu Xiu shot the arrow, Feng Qishao understood what Chu Xiu meant. The Triple City Annihilation arrow shot out, and wherever it passed, a vacuum was formed. The essence of the world was annihilated, and even the warriors in its path were forced to retreat. Feng Qishao's figure directly turned into a sword light, and he followed behind the Triple City Annihilation arrow at the fastest speed possible. The arrow seemed to be opening the way for him, and he was unimpeded along the way. Even the powerful sword chi of the Scarlet Dragon Slayer began to collapse under Chu Xiu's arrow. The sword spirit even let out a sorrowful cry, and there was a hint of disbelief in its sorrowful cry. A sword spirit at the level of the Scarlet Dragon Slayer was already quite intelligent, and it even had the right to choose its master. It was just like Lu Fengxian's unparalleled divine weapon. Before Lu Fengxian obtained LV1Ho's primordial spirit fragment, she couldn't get close to the unparalleled divine weapon at all. Only when it fused with LV1Ho's primordial spirit fragment would the unparalleled divine weapon willingly let Lu Fengxian control it. Now, the Scarlet Dragon Slayer was in the same situation. After appearing in the world, the Scarlet Dragon Slayer also wanted to choose a master who was worthy of it. The existence that forged it was a top swordsmithing master in ancient times, and the person who used it was also a hero with the strength of the Scarlet Dragon Slayer. Now, if someone wanted to own this divine sword that had been stained with the blood of the Scarlet Dragon, ordinary people wouldn't be qualified. Therefore, in the Scarlet Dragon Slayer's opinion, the surrounding warriors were like breeding insects, letting them kill each other first. Only the person who killed the last one would be qualified to control it. In the end, who would have thought that there would be someone who didn't play by the rules? Instead of killing others, he attacked it. Aren't you afraid of accidentally hurting this divine sword? Chu Xiu didn't expect a sword spirit to have so many inner thoughts. Of course, it didn't matter even if he knew. Regardless of whether it was a sword or any other weapon, only a weapon held in the hands of a warrior was a true weapon. Weapons were for use, not for worship. He wasn't a member of the Hidden Sword Mountain Manor, so he wouldn't get used to this bad habit. Seeing this, Zhang Qingzhen had already unsheathed the evil-slaying sword in his hand. In that instant, a piercingly cold sword light flashed, and lightning flashed. The sword light was like thunder from the 9 heavens, and it slashed 7 times in a row, almost cutting off all of Feng Qishao's paths forward. In the past, the power of Dugu Weiwei's Triple City Annihilation arrow could be said to be renowned throughout the entire pugilistic world. Perhaps because it was too long ago, the other sects didn't remember, but the elderly heavenly master had told Zhang Qingzhen about the terrifying feat of Dugu Weiwei's arrow piercing through the Iron Emperor Castle in the past. Thus, Zhang Qingzhen didn't try to intercept that arrow. He only intercepted Feng Qishao. However, to his surprise, Feng Qishao's expression was one of rare seriousness. Specks of starlight shone from the shocking centipede sword in his hand, and he slashed out 7 times. The 7 sword lights didn't look very impressive, but it was as if they had transcended time and space, and they suddenly collided with Zhang Qingzhen's 7 sword lights. In that instant, the specks of starlight disappeared into thin air, as if they had never existed. A hint of surprise finally appeared on Zhang Qingzhen's calm face. After a moment, a smile appeared on his face, and he murmured, "I've underestimated you." Zhang Qingzhen had failed. He hadn't failed at Chu Xiu's hands, but he had failed at Feng Qishao's hands. He had made a huge mistake. He had underestimated his opponent. In fact, given Feng Qishao's character, anyone would underestimate him. Even those who didn't know him well wouldn't be able to imagine that this fellow was the rumored top swordsman of the younger generation, Feng Qishao. He was a disgrace to swordsmanship. Although Zhang Qingzhen wasn't like others who believed that a person's character represented a person's strength, he had subconsciously underestimated Feng Qishao. That was why he hadn't even used his full strength when he fought with Feng Qishao earlier. It was only when Chu Xiu had arrived that he had used his full strength. Now, Zhang Qingzhen realized that he was wrong. Feng Qishao's understanding of the karma swordsmanship had already involved time and space, and his opponent's 7 sword lights had directly intercepted the source of his 7 sword lights. He had intercepted his attack from the source. He hadn't used his full strength before, but Feng Qixiao had used his full strength? Zhang Qingzhen thought about it carefully. In all these years, there had been people who had seen him, Zhang Qingzhen, fight with his full strength, and had also seen Chu Xiu fight with his life on the line. However, when had anyone ever seen 7th young Master Feng use his full strength? It wasn't scary to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger. What was scary was that someone was originally a tiger but was born with a pig's skin. Not having to pretend to be a tiger was already the best disguise. Boom! The Triple City Annihilation arrow blasted on the slaying Crimson Dragon, and countless sword auras dissipated. Even the sword light on the slaying Crimson Dragon dimmed a little. Feng Qixiao followed closely behind and grasped the hilt of the sword. The long sword suddenly erupted with an extreme resistance, but Feng Qixiao directly poured powerful sword auras into it, and it was completely absorbed. After obtaining the slaying Crimson Dragon, Feng Qixiao heaved a sigh of relief. However, he still complained to Chu Xiu. "Hey, Brother Chu, can you be a little more careful? This is the 7th divine sword in the famous sword manual. Is this how you treat a divine sword?" Chu Xiu rolled his eyes and lightly said, "You should be content. It's already good enough to get the sword. Why do you have so many demands?" Dugali, who was fighting fiercely with Butiannan, or more accurately, being suppressed by Butiannan, immediately heaved a sigh of relief. It was not in vain for him to resist Butiannan for so long for Chu Xiu. The slaying Crimson Dragon finally fell into the hands of Sword King City. However, at this time, Dugali suddenly realized something. Why did he help Chu Xiu resist Dugali? Wouldn't it be the same if he ignored Chu Xiu and obtained the slaying Crimson Dragon himself? However, before Dugali could say anything, a violent shaking sound came from the top of the mountain. A weak formation light bloomed, but it was immediately extinguished. A large area of the mountain peak cracked open, revealing a passage. There were faint traces of an inscribed formation in it. Feng Qixiao was the closest to the place. In the next moment, everyone realized what was going on. The mountain had been hollowed out, and there was another relic inside. However, this relic was too well hidden. It was so well hidden that no one realized that there was something else inside even after standing there for a long time. Just now, when Chu Xiu attacked the slaying Crimson Dragon with the triple annihilation arrow, it collided with the sword energy on the slaying Crimson Dragon. The powerful shockwave should have completely destroyed the previously damaged formation, which caused the passage inside to be exposed. Feng Qixiao thought about it and took 2 steps back. He didn't want to seize the initiative. He was actually a very cautious person. If he encountered something unknown, he would rather let others go ahead. If he couldn't get the best things himself, he would rather not explore the way ahead. At that moment, several auras came from the surroundings. More than 10 martial artists went up the mountain one after another. When the slaying Crimson Dragon was unsheathed, the sword light shot straight into the sky. It could be seen from hundreds of miles away, and it had already attracted a group of martial artists. Of course, they came a little too late. The divine sword already had an owner. Most of the people who went up the mountain were martial Dao masters. There were 3 people at the true fire spirit refinement realm, and one of them was Wei Shuya. Chu Xiu also breathed a sigh of relief and walked toward Wei Shuya. There were 2 people left. One of them was Shen Baochen from the Sword Hut, and the other was the general of the Northern Yen East Mountain Army, Kuang Tu Beigong Bailey. Beigong Bailey was a middle-aged man in a white Confucian robe. He looked gentle, but no one would have guessed that hundreds of thousands of people had died in the hands of this general. Moreover, Chu Xiu also noticed that Sun Qili and Sun Qifan from the Sun family of River East were among the people who came. Chu Xiu couldn't help but glance at the 2 of them with a hint of gloominess. He had noticed that when Kuang Shiyue was chasing after him, these people were all by his side. They were obviously leading the way. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.